I don't know if any of my 2012 people are here, but I always got to do it. Denny's not here. Come on. It's all right. I'm here. So I did this class in 2012. It was amazing. I had so much fun. That's why you guys are still here and coming to this every week. I know it can be hard on your schedule, but I know I speak for all of our staff and volunteers. We really appreciate you guys. We're really excited to have you. And I know, probably quite a few of you will be here for decades, which is really exciting. So that's, once you become a docent, it's kind of with you for life. So we're really excited to have you and really glad that you guys are committing so many hours of your time to do this and whatever you do moving forward. So if you guys have any questions, I'm here. Here's my cheesy Smokey Bear photo and my information. Our phones are out half the time. I know Placerita can relate. So if you guys don't get me by phone, email always works good, but leave a message right now. We're in the 18th century for our phone system, so you know how it goes. So I oversee the beautiful Vasquez Rocks, which is a dream. I grew up there. My parents were both docents. We're in the NCA and the VRNCA chapters. So I volunteered all through college and was actually hired at the park as a part-timer back in 2015 and became superintendent in 2020 in the midst of all the chaos. But it was great. It's been a dream come true. I don't want to do anything else with my life. I want to do this forever and ever. And it's really a pleasure being able to we're lucky to be able to get to do what we do, right? And even you guys being able to take the time to do the volunteering is huge, not having to be tied to something else and being able to get away and do this for yourself and for other people is great. So Vasquez Rocks, I don't know how many of you guys know, it actually is one of the largest historic Tataviam villages. So the name of the village was Mapimpinga, so we're really excited to be getting support of management to bring tribal language and naming back to the park. So where our sign says Vasquez Rocks, soon it'll actually say Mapimpinga on the bottom of it, which is really exciting. So for you guys out here, we'll talk about it. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about today. I'm sorry we can't go outside and run around, but we can always do a fun supplemental hike later on when it's nice. But hopefully you guys have good weather next time for Helen's talk, because she has a lot of great ethnobotany, so the uses of plants for food, medicines, everything in between. So this story is not complete today. It's not complete when she, adds all of her amazing knowledge. So this is something that is really big and ongoing. So just keep your minds open with this topic, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So this is kind of some of the broad stroke stuff we're going to go over today. If we have time, I know there's a lot of us. I kind of want to see. Maybe I'll just call on like a handful of you really quick and just touch base we'll do a little survey. Who feels like you know nothing about our local native cultures? And it's okay if you don't. Okay, perfect. That's usually the reaction. And I apologize if my email goes off 20 times, filming people. Raise your hand if you feel like you know a little bit. You could do a little bit of interpretation for the public. You're like kind of okay. Yeah, usually it's all one or the other. And then raise your hand if you feel like you know everything and you're very seasoned and you're not worried about it at all. See, and all the senior docents know we never know anything. The more you learn, the less you feel like you learn, or like that you know or that you master. So I'll give you guys all of the kind of introductory stuff. I'll pass around some cool show and tell stuff. I'll call on my Vanna White up here, who is the most lovely Vanna White of all time. And we'll just kind of jump into it. So I know we have a lot of stuff to do. So we're going to talk about the cultural history and present of this era, which is really important. We're going to talk about how do we know what we know about generations ago. Physically, how did we come to understand what happened here 1,000, 4,000, 5,000 years ago? Life here, we're going to look at the way that the tribal families feel and believe in their past and their connection to this place, which is, for us, a lot of us, a very different thing, very different approach, but to me it's really beautiful and it's more meaningful than a lot of the ways that we're brought up to see it. The mission era and settler colonialism, the 19th and 20th centuries, continuing with tribal sovereignty and cultural preservation in the tribe today. So we have a lot to cover, but I think you guys are going to enjoy it, so we'll just jump in. So this is not just for you. I'm going to try to give you guys a lot of knowledge, but you guys are also going to be teaching, right? You're going to be teaching the public, little tiny kids up to seniors, right? And everybody in between. So it's important to remember too, and I didn't add this up top, but what I'm teaching you guys today is from my perspective, right? I'm not native. I, spent my whole life here. I was born right next to Vasquez Rocks. I love it like family. I always will. But my ancestors are not from there. And I want to show you guys that even though your ancestors are not from a place, you can still respect, appreciate, understand those whose ancestors are of that place, physically of that earth now, So Placerita is a really special place, even though this was not specifically a village site. This was a really important gathering grounds for food, hunting ground. So places like this, these big oak groves, sycamore groves, creeks, were necessary for life out here. So you guys are coming to a very, very special place, and I know you know that. So the indigenous story of this area is ongoing and changing. It's not a past tense story, nor is it far away. So you literally have almost 1,000 tribal members all around you. Many of them are in San Fernando Valley, many are in Santa Clarita, some are in the Antelope Valley. And it's ongoing. I mean, these are direct DNA descendants of the people who lived here thousands of years ago. So when I was growing up too, I noticed we kind of had to push back against, and a lot of our senior docents too probably, it was always taught as though it was very past tense, right? That it was in the past and very disconnected to now, but that's not true. So one of your jobs as a docent is going to have to be to remind people that. And if you hear people kind of saying that way, like you'll hear people say straight out, I saw it on Facebook the other day, oh, the last Tatavium died 200 years ago. That's not true. Scientifically, that's not even true. So there's a lot of wrongs that you will have to gently try to correct and steer people in the right direction with things. But it's also not our job as educators and interpreters to know everything. You'll never know everything. I won't either. Rudy, the tribal president, won't either. And you don't have to. You don't need to know that. And that's one of the things I loved about this training when I did it many moons ago. And I forget if it was Jim or Ron, one of the senior docents was like, it's okay to say you don't know. And with this topic, it's very appropriate to say, I'm not too sure, I can't speak on that, but let's try to figure it out together. Or there's a lot of great resources that you can direct people to, which is really, really awesome. So it is our job to ensure that we don't spread misinformation, don't fill in holes where we don't know the answer, which has happened a lot in the past, or perpetuate really outdated ideas, like that the last Tatavian person died hundreds of years ago and there are none left on the face of the earth. Not true. Many parts of these stories are uncomfortable, containing unfathomable devastation, but also incredible survival and resilience. Remember to not trivialize or discount it, as it's a vital part of the story of our valley. So I know, you guys learned about the mission system. Who went to California public schools? Anybody? I did the whole time. So who learned this really romanticized version of the mission system? Built a cute little mission, a lot of us did. And that's not what it is. This beautiful architecture really hides a really, really ugly story, and one that continues to be very traumatic for a lot of people. And a lot of us are not triggered by the trauma of our immediate ancestors because we just don't know it, right? Who is not native to here? Who is not native to true generations back, native to California or Southern California, right? Probably most of us. So it's the way that we're so disconnected from our past makes it hard for a lot of us to put ourselves in the place where, oh, I know where 10 generations back my family was, and I know exactly what happened to them, and that it was really painful. So it's just, this is a topic that's really, I want you guys to appreciate the weight of it and the responsibility, but be proud of what you can do to respectfully share it. And if you ever don't know, you ask. I'm always here. You have some amazing senior docents and staff here, and the tribe is like 15 minutes down the road. So looking at Native California, and Helen's got some amazing stuff that she brought for me to hand out to everybody too. So there's specific things that are unique to different, what we call a tribal group or a lineage or an ancestral group. But what we don't want to do is put Native Californians in one box, right? They're not all the same. Someone's use of a specific plant may not be the same as another's, or they could have overlapped. They could have had, relations and gatherings many, many, many generations before that. But we don't want to assume just because two people were close in proximity that they were the same, because they weren't. So try to avoid generalizations if you can. If you know something specific, you can say, oh, hey, the Shumash, which were our, the immediate neighbors used abalone in this way, while the Tataviam used yucca in this way. But they also shared the way that they used acorns. So you guys will learn, it's the way you learn about anything else. If you get into birds or amphibians or whatever, start learning those tidbits and build up your confidence that way. It can look intimidating. So this is a beautiful map from this awesome book. Where is it? I have too many books. I have too many things going on here. So this book is great. If you guys ever get this to add to your library, this is one on California native languages. So Tataviam is actually undergoing a reconstruction right now, which is really, really cool. So if you guys want to look at this book, I'll pass it around. It's a little bit pricey, but one of my amazing friends gave that to me years ago, which was really sweet when I was a very broke grad student. So this book talks about all the different language families, because not all native languages are the same or even related. So Tataviam and Chumash, completely different language families, the way that English and Japanese are, right? Completely different. Both beautiful, both unique, not related to each other. So if you look at this map, these are two maps. So one of them is the different tribal groups. So the bigger map is all the distinct tribal groups. There's at least about 200 very distinct identities, distinct ethnobotany practices, different life ways, different histories. And then the colorful map that's in the corner is the language families. So the way that Tataviam is shared with Tongva and some of the Sonoran desert languages, Chumash, again, totally different. So understanding the diversity is something that's really helpful for you guys to also share with the public. You can, if you have a group of people, it's like I know, Glenda and I have had very different lives. Helen and I have had very different upbringings, and we share a lot of interests, but the way you wouldn't want to lump us together, the way we're all so different, is the same thing with native communities. You wouldn't want to do that either, because you'd be doing a disservice. So in our area, we're fortunate in the way of teaching that we've only got currently one recognized tribal group, and that's the Tataviam, right? So there are two organized groups within the Tataviam. The one that I work with the most is the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. So you guys might recognize their logo, the one on the right. So they have about, I think, 800 or 900 registered enrolled members right now, which is amazing. Really active group. And then a smaller group, which is the San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. I'm really glad, because they're gaining more traction and they're becoming, doing more advocacy for themselves, more tribal organizations. So these are the two groups. So if you guys ever do anything in this area, new programming, anything like that, anytime I do it, I reach out to both. I work with both. They're both wonderful. The San Fernando Band they've recently redone their website. So they're really, really kind of, I think they have some really great staff on their boards now. So they're doing really, really well. And the Fernandino Tataviam, they've been really active for decades and decades. Strong part of the American Indian movement, and very organized tribal government. They have a great website. So if you guys want to write down these two websites, this is really kind of your primary place to start for getting information straight from the tribes, which is very appropriate in doing something like this. So these are the only two recognized tribes that are Tataviam by the state. Especially the Fernandino Tataviam are seeking federal recognition. So we'll all cross our fingers and, excitement that they get it. I have a feeling that they will at some point. It's a really long road. It's taken decades, but if anybody can do it, Rudy and his staff can do it. I know that for sure. So this is kind of a current map that the Fernandino Tataviam, and a lot of the graphics are from the Fernandino Tataviam. They do a lot of education. So this is kind of the overall tribal boundary. You can see the yellowish buffer around it is also ancestral Tataviam land, but it's also shared with other groups like Katanamak, Serrano, which is San Manuel, Chumash, Tongva, things like that. So mostly it's agreed upon that inside the dotted line is pretty straightforward Tataviam ancestral land. So you can see Mapimpinga kind of in the middle there. That's Vasquez Rocks, so we're closer to, and I can actually, if you guys go to their website, you can zoom in on this and look at all the village names. But out here in Santa Clarita and Newhall, there were several villages, which is really, really cool, because we're still learning more and more about it. And shout out to Leon Warden and Stan Walker, who keep unearthing really, really old mission and land records that are telling us more about these village sites. So these I have up here, these are from the tribe. The tribe has a lot of really cool graphics, but I'm gonna try to show you guys a video that kind of encapsulates these and talks about even just the naming we use, right? So we use the broad strokes term like tribe, right? Because there's not really another equivalent word, but I don't know if you guys know this. I didn't know this for a long time. The way that the Tataviam were organized was by lineages. So at Vasquez Rocks, that village was pretty large, you know, several hundred people at a time, they think. That was one lineage, one grouping of descendants that would, you know, bring in intermarry, but it was centered around the lineage. Same thing with the village here in Newhall, same thing with the village, you know, over towards like Magic Mountain. So we use the word tribe, but that's just kind of for lack of a better catch-all, you know, but it's basically these groups of lineages that were in a geographic place that shared a language. And they did, you know, they worked together, but they each were sovereign. They each had a unique kind of identity that way. So let's see if, let me show you real quick too. These are the 3 recognized lineages. So particularly so we have Ortega, Garcia, and Ortiz. So the San Fernando band mostly consists of the Ortiz lineage. And then this Fernandeño Tataviam is primarily the Ortega Garcia lineage. So if that kind of helps you remember, you know, the way that these families are grouped. So let's see, we'll keep our fingers crossed. So this is a 13-minute video. This is straight from the tribe. So I feel like this is a really good way for you guys to get just kind of that firsthand introduction to just the naming and what the tribe consists of today. So if you feel free to like get your wiggles out. I know you guys are stuck inside for a long time today, but we'll see if our sound works and if it'll play. If not, you just have to hear me talk a lot more, but that's okay.
Fernandeño Tataviam Band Mission Indians, the people facing the sun. This presentation is about the history of the tribe, a sovereign native nation of northern Los Angeles County.
Present. This section covers the present administration, programs, and goals of tribe. The distinct community of the present-day Fernandeño Tataviam Band of Mission Indians originated in the lineages, villages, and cultures preceding the establishment of Mission San Fernando, from which the natives received the name Fernandeño.
Might have to buffer for a minute.
This little buffering.
Yeah, I should have done it before and I didn't think of it. So I'm going to pause it really quick and I'll let it kind of load and we'll jump around a little bit. I have some pictures and stuff I can show you guys too. So the interesting thing is this tribe is, so how many of you knew tribe with the tribal government and, right? How many of you live in Santa Clarita? Right? There's a big difference there. There's a lot of you that live here and a lot of you that didn't know that, and that's not necessarily your fault. You know, we're so busy with everyday life that it's easy to miss this and not realize this. You know, I grew up working a lot with the tribe. Yeah.
So there's a land trust that has helped one of the groups get land up by Lake Elizabeth.
Yes.
Which band is it? Which group?
Fernandeño Tataviam. And actually, I'm going to talk about that. I have a slide for it, but that is one of the really, really exciting things. Like, have you guys heard that? We can jump around a little bit. Yeah, it's over 500 acres, which is amazing. And so it's the Tataviam Land Conservancy. I can show you we'll just talk about it real quick because it is a very important part of the story. Let me see. I put it closer towards the end, I think. I moved slides around at like 10 o'clock last night. You know how it is. So this just happened. This is really amazing. And I'm actually on the board for the Tataviam Land Conservancy. I got invited in when we started in 2018. It's been one of the best experiences of my entire life. And it is amazing to see for centuries these disenfranchised, you know, people who were from here for thousands of years, matrilineal DNA tying these people to this land irrefutably for thousands of years, not being able to own any land of theirs. And now this is the first time in this group, Land Veritas they do mitigation banks and preservation and restoration of land. So they donated over a 500 acre contiguous parcel to the tribe to hold in perpetuity. So it's really, really exciting that there's so much progress because when I was a kid, this seemed impossible. You know, even in the way this one came up fast and furious a year ago, this almost seemed impossible. But it shows you that over, probably 10 or 20 years of work to form the Conservancy behind the scenes before we actually formed and incorporated in 2018. This is what it leads to. So I want you guys to see this as a really very much a story of resilience and what can happen. So it's like we start with 500 acres, and just on Sunday I was doing a site visit for another potential amazing property that was part of the village of Mapimpinga. So it's really, really, really exciting. Yeah.
So another thing that you might not know
Mm-hmm.
is that we are working on creating the northern part of the Angeles Forest as a national monument. And as we do that, when we work on a national monument, that means they have to have a new forest plan.
Mm.
And at that point, voices that have not been heard yet on the forest plan will have an opportunity, such as the Tatavium, to help plan the forest area, because that entire area has many sacred sites. in the
Yeah.
Tatavium.
Very much so, and very old sites, Yeah, it's very exciting that, protections can be complicated, but it's always worth doing, you know what I mean? Let's see if this will cooperate. I don't know if it was even buffering or not now. Come on, you silly thing. No, nothing? You're cranky today? Either way, this is, if you guys even go to like YouTube and just run the name of the tribe, or even type Fernandino Tataviam, you'll get a lot. There's a video that's over an hour that I think they did with Natural History Museum or I think it was LA County Libraries. And it's a really good overview. I would have had you guys watch it, but we could be here all day and then some. Well, this one doesn't want to load now. That's a bummer. It's not even showing the option to play it. But that's okay. So I can send you guys, I'm going to send you guys some links too. I'll send them to Ron, and then I'm sure Ron will filter them out to everybody. But just some videos and different things that you guys can watch if you have any questions or just to understand the organization of the tribe better. I can't necessarily do it justice because it's very long-standing. It's complicated. There's a legislative office, an executive office. The tribe oversees various 501c3 nonprofits like the Land Conservancy. So I like to start this story too by bringing up all of the amazing people that are active today, right? And in the past, even I did this. I would tell the story chronologically, but it leads you to believe, oh, just these old black and white documents are so disconnected from the people today, but this is what is today. These are the people that are today, that are now. And they're amazing, and they're all, you guys might know Alan Salazar. He does a lot of storytelling, and I'll pass these around, talking about restoration of language and culture too. So has anybody seen this book? This is a good gift shop item. I'll tell Glenda it's a good gift shop item. So Alan helped write this awesome language book with the team at the Educational and Cultural Learning Department. So this is a Tataviam language workbook. And this is amazing because you literally would have been killed for speaking that language. And that's why it's really big that, like at the Rocks, we're able to get support to name our trails Tataviam names and put the village name up front, because that was a death sentence for you before. So speaking these words out loud, and I even want to teach you guys right now. Has anyone heard the word haminat? So that means hello. So ha-mi-nat. So you guys want to try it? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Haminat. Perfect. So, and it's in this book too, so you guys can look at it, check it out, and you'll be speaking Fernandino Tataviam before you know it.
Wait, what did I just speak?
Haminat means hello.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's in the book, so you can check the spelling, and yeah. I don't know if Ron can still hear me. So these are two absolutely beautiful books that Alan, who's a Tataviam and Chumash elder, and now his beautiful wife, Mona, have done. And she works with natural pigments. So again, great gift shop item. But one of the really important things you guys can do also is actually supporting Tataviam people. You know what I mean? Is supporting their work, supporting their knowledge. So these are two great books, really beautiful. He just came out with a third about Coyote, and it's a Chumash story. So we'll pass those around. And is anybody going to this in October? You definitely should. Eric has had his fill of heart powwows over the years. But it's an amazing event. we have no idea how lucky we are to have a real intertribal powwow in our backyard. I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for the tribe. It's a lot of work for the staff, but it's absolutely amazing. I used to always go to it as a kid. So mark those dates. Put them on your calendar. If you can see, it's October 5th and 6th.
The one at CSUN is also really
Oh,
good. And they
CSUN's
work with
amazing.
the tribes.
Yes.
So I just want to.
Yes. And do you guys want to see something cute? Yes. Sorry, just yell at me if you have a question if I don't see you.
Two tribes differ, the one from San Fernando and the one from New Home.
So same tribal group, perhaps different lineages. So there was a village site that was near Mission San Fernando, a lineage or village near, Magic Mountain, a lineage near at Vasquez Rocks, right? So same language family, same overall cultural ties, but also kind of the way you go to Agua Dulce, where I'm from, and the way, out in Santa Clarita, people just are a little, culturally, it's just a little bit different, Overall, we share the same language and a lot of practices. We're all, from LA County, we're all from California, but people where I live in my neck of the woods are very different than, Stevenson Ranch folks, per se. No, we're a bunch of hillbillies in the boonies. So speaking of CSUN is amazing. CSUN is on ancestral territory. So this little gentleman right here who is amazing is Jesus Alvarez. He's actually the president of the Tatamium Land Conservancy. So he is I believe he's a descendant of the Ortega line. Ooh, don't diss me if I'm wrong. So you guys might know the gentleman in the black and white photo. That was Charlie Cook. He used to hang out here a lot. He was at Vasquez a lot. He just lived in Acton. And he was one of the elders that I was really fortunate to grow up with and learned a lot of what I know from him. So these guys are related on that Garcia Ortega Cook side of the family. But Jesus actually works at CSUN. He's amazing. He works in the enrollment office, I believe, but he is a great resource if you guys ever want to reach out to him. He's a plant whiz. He does grafting. He does gardening, and he's done a lot of gardening projects at CSUN. So he works a lot with the efforts at the CSUN campus and including the powwow. But yeah, definitely CSUN powwow is amazing. And that's where I went. I love CSUN. I will miss it forever. It's fun when I get to go back. So I just want to show you guys a couple of current pictures, and we'll just kind of run through these and let me know if you have questions on what they are. Cultural preservation is obviously a really huge part of what the tribe does today because they're undoing, 300 plus years of, trying to be obliterated, when we speak frankly about it. So this is a really important part of what they do, but they also live everyday lives. A lot of these guys, this is Ted Garcia, who's probably, you guys may have met in the past. He's wonderful. He does traditional soapstone carving still. So I'll pass this one around too. So this is an abalone carving that Ted did. So be very careful with it, of course, so these cultural practices are really important to preserve in terms of also preserving the physical land itself, right? Like the Land Conservancy is doing. Performing solstice ceremonies that Alan usually does, and it's really beautiful. And reconstructing village sites. So I know you guys have an awesome miniature reconstruction over here, which is great. I'm working on one for Vasquez, but it's going slow. But at Rancho Camulos, you have a beautiful replica of a small village site, which is really great for people and kids to learn. So the more hands-on stuff you guys have, fantastic. Events too. So our big event, this was an event that was up at the Cajamonga Cultural Center up in the Angeles National Forest by Red Box Canyon. If you guys have been up there, I know we have a lot of road closures and landslides. But this was a handful of years ago, and this was a celebration of spring and yucca processing. So they invited all members of the public could come up and learn about processing every piece of the yucca, making cordage, making tea and food and preserving the leaves. So it was really an awesome event. And this is what we try to do at the Rocks too, and something that you guys as volunteers, because I know a lot of our senior volunteers are up to their ears with responsibilities already. So just working with the tribe on these events, we co-host our big open house event. It's always the last Saturday in April. And we partner with the tribe, so the tribe uses it also as a spring celebration. They have, the family reunites, they do songs and stories. They open with a blessing, close with a blessing. So, and we provide an honoraria for their families that are able to come out and help us, because a lot of Native people are also not, they're expected to just give all of their knowledge, a lot of which they've worked really hard for. They're not born knowing this, right? You guys aren't born knowing, what you know. But there's a big demand of Native people to give it away for free at the drop of a hat at any time. So the more you guys can really see their knowledge as valuable and real, which it is, that goes really, really far with gaining a really good relationship with any Indigenous person or group. So here's a couple more photos. One is from the solstice ceremony. The rest are from Day at the Rocks, which was at our park last year or the year before. I think these were all this last year. So this is Rudy Ortega in the white shirt, Rudy Ortega Jr. His dad was the tribal captain or president, and now he is the tribal captain. He's been doing an amazing job. And it's actually a chosen position. Even though he's the son of the previous leader, it was not automatically going to be him. But watching him, I've known him since I was a kid, watching him, you could tell from the beginning that he was made to do this, and that the direction that he's taken the tribe in has just been so impressive. And having someone who's savvy with technology and graphic design and business and advocacy has been wonderful. So we always give Rudy big props, because he's very modest, but he's an amazing president for the tribe. And again, there's Alan, so he's the one that wrote those beautiful books that you guys are looking at. Here's a couple of cuties. So this too, we always have to show, this is the face of the tribe. This is the future of the tribe, is all these amazing kids that are growing up being, knowing who they are, knowing where they come from, and not, always facing adversity. But these kids are growing up in a time where they're getting more support than ever to be a member of a tribal community, more so than 500 years, So there's always good, if you guys want to collaborate on programs for the tribal youth, it's amazing. They're so much fun. We come out and we teach the kids about, things that we can help the tribe with in terms of archaeology, geology, things that I can help teach them. And there's so much here that you guys can teach them too. So if you guys want, if you have the bandwidth, definitely reach out to the tribe and say, hey, we want to host you guys. We want to have you come over. It's great because they're not a school, because then you don't have to do the MOA, right? Docents, they know what I'm talking about, which takes forever. And advocacy is a huge part of what they do, right? This has been a long, hard, sometimes ugly fight, right? So this is Miss Caroline. She's a descendant also. And she walked, I believe it was back in 2015, she walked the entire route of the California mission system. And she culminated at the San Fernando Mission, where her ancestors were enslaved. And where many of them are buried in unmarked graves, which is really devastating. So this is a thing that is part of normal life for the members of the tribal community, to speak on why they deserve to exist. Has anybody had to do that? Has anybody had to fight and say, hey, I deserve to exist. I deserve to acknowledge where I come from. I deserve to be who I am. And that's a really challenging thing for a lot of us. I know, like myself, I grew up with a large amount of privilege that I'm still even just learning to recognize. And I know that, sometimes there's this really unfortunate divide between this whole woke, like politically incorrect, all of that. You have to just push all of that aside and realize this has been a tremendous struggle, and it really has. I mean, the direct ancestors, do you guys know where your grandparents, your great-grandparents came from and what they went through? Probably a lot were in World War II, World War I. All of these things that hurt when you think about, hey, maybe your grandpa or your great-grandpa going to war at 20 years old and the horrible things that he went through. They know that they went through generations of trauma and violence for using their language, for having their own name. Imagine not being able to be called by your own name that your mother gave you. So it's parts of it are very stark, very sad, but it's important for you guys to just remember that and not trivialize that. And you'll find ways to talking about to kids. Kids are very resilient. Kids are very strong. So we'll talk a little bit about the mission system and everything that came after that. But we'll we'll start with the archaeology, and then we'll kind of give you guys some of the knowledge and some of the tools to really start gaining your confidence in talking about this topic. But you guys know with everything else, has anybody led a hike yet? Or have you started auditing hikes yet?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Oh, wait.
I know. I do scout groups, that helps. Well, if you guys want to lead a hike, we will come over from Vasquez and Castaic. And we will it's tough, but it's intimidating until, and the senior docents probably remember, it's intimidating until you just do it, man. You get thrown in, and then it's like, oh, okay, they're not going to laugh at me. They're not going to throw rocks at me, I'm going to be okay. And let me know, too, I think how are we on break? When do we go on break time?
Usually about 10:30, so.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I'll try not to talk at you guys too much more. I wish our video would have worked, but so these are some terms, especially if you guys do a little bit more research, and I'll read you the bottom ones because I know they're obscured down there. You guys might read, especially if you do a little more reading, prehistoric versus historic. I don't necessarily like using these terms because what do you guys think of when you hear the word prehistoric? Right? So technically it's meaning before a time before like written recorded language, but you've had written recorded languages in Egypt for thousands of years. So that makes, just because the Tataviam or the Chumash or the native people who lived here didn't have written language, that doesn't place them differently than other people necessarily, you know what I mean? So I don't really use this, I don't know. I used to be an archaeologist, and I used to my bosses would kind of get on me about, you're overthinking it. I'm like, you're underthinking it. Like, what are you talking about? So you might see that. Basically, if you see prehistoric, it means before, in California, typically it means before European contact, in our case down here. Historic meaning the time after that. For me, I don't know. Sometimes I use pre-contact because that indicates a major change, obviously, so you can use pre or post-European contact. Archaeology is part of anthropology, which is the study of humans, which a lot of people don't actually know, which is ironic to me because even as kids, we should be learning anthropology. It focuses on the material remains that humans leave behind. In our case, this includes items such as materials that give information on food processing, which Ms. Helen is going to talk a lot about, ceremonial practices, and the role in trade culture. So I can start to show you guys some artifacts. So we have artifacts and features. Artifacts are portable. So this little donut stone right here, this is an artifact, right? I could pick it up, unfortunately put it in my pocket, which a lot of people do. But a feature, if you guys have seen a bedrock mortar, something like this, or a grinding food processing area that's in rock that you cannot pick up or move, that's a feature. So you can't move a feature, right? I could not pick up and move this nature center easily. Oral histories, those are histories that have been recorded orally, obviously, much of the time for the purpose of conserving that story. Ethnography is the study of a single group through direct contact with those people, including oral histories and interviews, particularly through interviews, observations. The work of J.P. Harrington is an example of Native Californian ethnographies and is an excellent resource to further study the subject. So there are actually reels that Harrington did in the 1800s with Tataviam speakers and with Chumash speakers, other Southern California groups. And sometimes these are the only recordings or records that we have of how the language was spoken, pronounced, what specific words mean, what place names were. So those are really, really vital. So at the bottom, it says ethnobotany, the study of the use of plants by specific culture, which you guys are super fortunate that you have a different class for that, because trying to put that in a different class just doesn't do it justice. And you have an awesome instructor that will blow your mind with this topic. BCE and CE, so it's before Common Era and Common Era. So it's basically BC and AD. So around the time, 2,000 years ago. So right now we are in 2024 Common Era. So you'll see that in academic writing, you won't see BC and AD, you'll see BCE and CE, which half of you probably can't see on the screen right now. So how do we know what we know? These are largely the resources that we utilize to learn about the Indigenous people in this area. So number one is ancestral knowledge, and this is information passed down and preserved through the Indigenous generations, through Tatavian families. Archaeological evidence. This is great because this includes organic and non-organic materials that we can date to really give us provenience of when and where people were living. Tatavian ethnographies that we talked about, ethnographers like J.P. Harrington. So these are intentional, like, hey, we're going to sit down and talk about this. You're going to tell me about your family tree. You're going to tell me about the village that you're from, how your marital practices work, you know, how you tie in with other tribal groups. And those are really, really important. Genealogical and genetic research. So testing mitochondrial DNA. So Charlie Cook, that beautiful black and white picture you saw, Charlie's mitochondrial DNA stretches back over 1,000 years to Tejon Ranch. And he lived just in Acton, so not too far from it. So the genetic research is a huge component, and it's a necessary component, unfortunately, for federal recognition. And even if you have a lot of proof, sometimes it takes decades to get that, but we're working on it. And then mission records, you can't really see at the bottom. One thing that, and same thing with the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, they're really good at keeping records and family records, so were the missions. The tribe has the Harrington reels and all of these mission records that allow them to put together their family trees. Because like my family, you know, we immigrated from Europe. I lose several branches off mine really quickly, but if you guys actually go on to scvhistory.com, Leon has put a lot of the mission records online that you guys can look at. And you can look at tracing the family lines and see who was related to who. It'll have information of roughly how old were they when they were baptized, what village were they from, and that's how we've reconstructed where a lot of these villages were and what they were called. So this is one of my favorite things. So I'll pass this around. These are a little bit heavy. So do you guys know how radiocarbon dating works? Does anybody not know how it works? Perfect, most people don't. So things that are organic or that were once alive, so you think of bone, wood, charcoal, anything like that, basketry can be dated because carbon decays at a very consistent rate, right? And so we use a formula, we physically test. Oh, we can tell that this thing is about 3,500 years old. Rock, you normally can't do that, but obsidian is an amazing stone and it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere at a consistent rate. So if you guys look at these, I'm going to pass these around. So these are actually from the Vasquez Rocks area. So these were from the village in Agua Dulce. These are largely obsidian points. You can see some of them are broken. If the tip is broken, that means it most likely was used because, you know, when you hit something, it's glass, you know, it's going to break the tip off. Ones that are perfect, most of these are not perfect. Probably fell out of somebody's pocket. But if you look at these obsidian points, they're amazing because we can not only date obsidian and tell when it was flaked, so you can tell when the surface of it was exposed. You can also tell where it came from. So our obsidian came from up by Mammoth Mountain, all the way out there in the Cosos. So if you can imagine hundreds of miles away, the trade networks brought this out here, and I believe there was obsidian also at some of the Santa Clarita area and San Fernando area villages. There used to be a lot of it around Vasquez. People pick it up and take it home and then never see it again. So this is a little bit heavy. If it's too heavy for you, don't feel bad asking a neighbor or Vanna White to help you with it. And we'll pass, maybe I'll start on the other side. Well, actually, let me hold off on this one. So that one, I just want you to look at the obsidian and look at how in certain spots where it was flaked off, it's very shiny. In other spots, it's more weathered. So those, we've had dates about 4,300 years ago at the village at Vasquez Rocks, which is pretty amazing. It's very likely older than that people were living in this area, but this is an amazing thing that it gives us a concrete date. You know, like radiocarbon dating, you can tell exactly how old faunal remains are, animal remains that were hunted that show signs of being worked, being used, right? So that's a really, really helpful thing.
What type of stone was used to do the actual flaking?
So that's a very good question. And we'll talk about that more, and I have a bunch of stuff I can show you. But it depends. So that would be really fun, too. If you guys ever get a guest speaker for one of the monthly talks that does napping, stone napping. Because I actually did it at CSUN in my archaeology classes. It's called experimental archaeology. It's so fun. But you start broad and you can use what's called a hammer stone. So you just take off those big flakes that way, and then you fine tune, right? And you can use, I'll pass this one around right now too, because why not? I have too much stuff I brought. So you can use something like this, a little tip of a deer bone. We actually would use copper, like a little piece of copper wire in a wooden handle. But if you guys feel how strong the tip of this is, this works great to flake, especially obsidian that's softer. That would easily flake off, make a really sharp edge, but that's a good talk. So you have to reach out to CSUN Archaeology Department and have one of them come out, do a little demo. One of my professors went on paternity leave for its first baby. It was great. So his friend, who was a professor, stepped in, and I forgot how it came up, but somebody challenged him to make a mortar, a big grinding slab. Because when you think of those, it's like, oh, somebody can make a projectile point, a little arrowhead. Oh, you could probably make that in an hour, pretty quick in one sitting. But you don't normally think of these big grinding stones as being able to do that, but he did it. And he was drenched in sweat by the end, but it was very impressive.
Was there any other material besides obsidian that they were using to make the points?
Yes, and actually,
Up there too.
we can talk about, I'm glad you said that. So I'll jump forward a little bit. So basically, we're going to talk about artifact types, and I'll show you guys a bunch of different artifacts. So life obviously was centered around plants and animals, right? I mean, that was, humans are not removed from that process. They were a part of that process, and that's a really hard thing for us to understand, because for us, everybody in this room makes an intentional effort to put themselves back in nature, right? Because we are so pulled away from it. But imagine that it's just, you are part of it, and that's how, our ancestral communities, our indigenous communities, that's how it was, because you were part of it, you were in it. So there was a lot of plants and animals that held, a lot of these animals held very significant spiritual meaning and connection. You'll notice a lot of the animals that have this meaning more, they're not specifically food items, the way like a deer or a squirrel could be. But these are largely predators, right? And they're animals that are largely very, very intelligent also. So for our tribal group, for the Tataviam in particular, two of the highest animals that they appear on the tribal seal is the golden eagle and the black bear. So we always like to bring those up. Different family groups kind of had, there was, Charlie used to tell me about a couple of different, and I assume they were part of one of the lineages, but one was, associated with the mountain lion and the other was associated with the coyote. A lot of sacred plants, a lot of medicinal and plants that were used for food. Again, Ms. Helen's going to talk to you guys about not even all of that, but a large amount of it that you'll see here at Placerita Canyon, which is really helpful. She also made and brought for you guys cookies, which maybe we'll do those right before break. What do you think? Or we could do them now.
We can do it now.
All right. Give it up for Vanna White, everybody. And she's going to tell you how she made these, because it's very impressive.
It's an entirely different idea that I had, and this was taking acorn flour, and I'll explain that next week, how you process the acorns, but from the acorn flour, I just roasted it. And I know that when we're used to getting flour, we use generally from wheat or from corn, from some of our grains. But you can use flour from from edible plants like yucca. I've taken yucca seeds and added that to flour, and you have different vitamins and nutrients that go with it. So these cookies are half acorn flour and half regular wheat flour. I used coconut oil, an egg, some baking powder, baking soda. There was no sugar in it. It's just what I described to you, except I wanted to get, because we're used to having things taste a certain way. So I took 1 tablespoon of powdered sugar and 1 tablespoon of cocoa, mixed it together, and that's what's topping it. And so they're kind of crumbly because this is the first time I ever tried it and, tried to make this. So
It's like we'll vacuum after. It's okay.
So we can take it and just pass it down.
And this is just an example of the amazing class she's going to do. I'm going to try to get away so I can come to your class. But obviously native plants were a huge part of everyday life, right? And some of them required more processing than others, you know. So the lineages out here in Santa Clarita, you guys can probably guess what a main staple was, right? Acorns. You guys have big, beautiful acorns where I come from. In my neck of the woods, we mostly, on the periphery, we do have some coast live oaks, but what we do have a lot of is little, what we call scrub oaks. We think there's about 7 or 8 different kinds. It's also hard because they hybridize with each other, and it makes it really hard for me to learn which one is which. But I believe these are from a Sonoran scrub oak at my mom's house, which is 2 miles from the rocks. So you can see the acorn weevils got into a couple of them with the little holes. But you guys will notice that those are littler and skinnier than a lot of, you know, the acorns that you guys have down here in Santa Clarita. But that would have been, you know, something that was traded, right, between the lineages. It wasn't, you know, competitive. It wasn't like, oh, these are mine, you can't have any. It was, you know, hey, you guys also have things that would be useful for us. So I will pass around a couple. Again, I have too much stuff. Let's do juniper. So if you guys look at these, so this is holly leaf cherry, which you guys also have. This is an awesome plant, and Ms. Helen's probably going to talk about it, but one that you could ferment a drink out of and eat the kernel within these hard pits. If you can get to it before the weevils do, they love getting these. So do the coyotes. It makes me laugh when the coyotes eat these because you know, these are like, oh, I didn't bring them. They're like marble size. They're like this big. And how the coyotes eat them and pass them, I don't know.
Sarah, can I explain the holly leaf cherries?
Yes, please.
Okay, so when we see the holly leaf cherries, generally they're ripe in like August.
Yeah, for us it's, yeah.
There's a huge pit and the skin is very, very thin, but it's sweet and it's good. But actually the food value happens to be in the pit. And I was reading, you know, different journals. This was a couple of years ago, and I knew that they gave, you know, this was a ceremonial, you know, we have guests, we're going to serve the holly leaf cherry. Knowing how that they cook things, I took the holly leaf cherry pits once the skin was removed and simmered it. And as I was simmering the pits, they opened up. You know, like these little, the Russian dolls where you have one inside the other. And I thought, wow, so first you have the food value that's of the skin. And then when the pit opened up, it was almost like seeing a pistachio nut open up. And this refried bean type matter floated up to the top. And it was like, oh, okay. So I knew that the pits were supposed to, you know, they have cyanide in it like a lot of our stone fruit does. But also with Dr. Adams, I knew about how long you cook things to get the cyanide level out to save, you know, safe thing. So I watched this and did, you know, some changes of water and then just took the refried bean matter and made them into little balls, rolled them up in chia and served them. And you need to have some of the flavor in it because you want to taste cherry. And so nobody died, nobody got sick. I'll be happy to say that.
Nobody threw up.
Nobody did. There's been other ways that people have tried to get to it, but the food value is in the pit, not on the coating. So
Yeah, the
thanks.
coating is just kind of like a nice little bonus. It kind of tastes like, to me it tastes like a plum sort of when they're ripe. When before that they're kind of bitter, but again, you want to teach what's something you want to teach the public in regards to native? Don't just put stuff in your mouth, please. At the rocks, I have heard so many, I'm sorry, it's mostly the dads, oh, you know, you can eat you can just crunch these things up. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do that. Please don't do that. And until you tell them, hey, it's got cyanide in there. Also, it'll break your teeth. But yeah, there's a lot of really amazing native plant foods, but you have to know what to do with them. So part of your guys' responsibility too is to help keep the public from hurting themselves. So this in the middle, these are juniper seeds, California juniper. This is what I have a lot of. And guess what I have a stage 5 allergy to? No. Only one thing, it is the California juniper. So I go and I get weekly shots. It's fine. Because I love junipers. I stick my head in them all the time. So this is a contemporary necklace that I bought from a native artist that's made of juniper seeds. And then these are juniper seeds that are from Vasquez rocks. So you guys can kind of see, thank you. So you guys can kind of see what those look like, because you don't have too many junipers out here in Santa Clarita, but if you come to Agua Dulce, we have thousands of them. And then I'm going to pass around a couple of others. So here's another. This one I just got. Anybody have a penchant for jewelry? I have a problem with buying necklaces, and I hardly ever get to wear them. So these are pine nuts, obviously, too, right? These are from Northern California, from another artist that I buy from. So these are roasted. You can see they're darker, and these are not. But I want you guys just to feel these are from, I don't know what type of pine these are, but in the Angeles National Forest, obviously, we have a lot of beautiful native pine trees. And pine nuts are also a really great staple food item for a lot of lineage groups, too. And some of the pine nuts are really teeny tiny. And then this one is very special, too. And Helen, I don't know, do you talk about manzanita in your class much? So this is from my friend. If you guys have ever bought on Instagram, shout out to Nick Hummingbird or Nick Hernandez. He's amazing with native plants and seeds. So if you guys ever want to buy sustainable, ethically sourced native plant seeds, shout out to Nick. So my husband got this for me for a present from Nick, and it's coated with jojoba oil. But these are big berry manzanita seeds too. So this is an item that, again, from the research I've done, it sounds like a lot of different groups had different uses for manzanita, so I don't like to generalize. There's also many, many types of manzanita, and they can hybridize, again, which makes it complicated. Mostly here, I think you guys specifically just have big berry, right? Too? Yeah.
I can explain a little bit more.
Yeah, go for it. And I'll start passing this one around.
Concerning manzanita, or the big berry manzanita, they have pits inside that can make you sick. But the outside of it, if you dehydrate it, it makes a sugar. Or what I've done with the big berry manzanita is I took, the ratio was 1 cup of manzanita berries to 4 cups of water for starts. And that was, the only way you can really do it is with a rock. And so I pounded it to crack them open and put the water inside and then let it simmer and then had it there, in the water overnight. And then I drained it and I saved that water, and with those berries, I used the same berries, and this time I really, really pounded it. You have to do it gently. You can't just blenderize it because you don't want those seeds inside the juice that you're going to make. And so I did it a second time, so now I have 8 cups of water in it. I did nothing other than what I just explained to you and let it sit there for like days. And then we had it at Placerita. Do you remember that, Ron?
Yeah, it was delicious.
It tasted like a Trader Joe's juice. It was really, really good. So
great.
I shouldn't be promoting this other than grow this in your own yard.
Don't let that leave this room.
But grow it in your own yard and know that it's a great plant. No wonder the bears
an
and
amazing plant.
everybody eats it.
Exactly. Oh, it is. It's like, and it's sad because if you guys have lived here for a minute, we had out 2006 to like 2016. Man, when I was a kid at Vasquez Rocks, there were so many manzanitas and they were beautiful. And there's hardly any now, which is really tragic. And up at Devil's Punch Bowl, a lot of really old, 200-plus-year-old manzanitas, and a lot of them burned. So when you guys see a manzanita, give it a little hug and tell it to hang on, because they're very slow growing, but they're amazing.
But look at how you have to be careful with it, though.
You do.
You do not have any bit of pit in there.
Yeah.
You will get sick.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
That's why a lot of people get really intimidated with working with native plants, but you just gotta, again, try not to hurt yourself. And Ms. Helen's gonna talk a lot about this too, but she brought this, which you guys may have seen these before. I think these are great. This is more Diné Navajo area dyes, but this gives you the idea of, all of the different, for textiles and cordage and basketry, all the different natural dyes that you can get from native plants and from minerals. So we'll pass that guy around. And then we're going to talk, let me jump ahead. So I just wanted to show you guys too the size difference with the acorns, because I know you saw the little jar and the necklace. But from a valley oak to like my little scrub oaks is pretty vast. So one thing that's tough is we'll talk about this little guy. So groundstone artifacts, we started talking about, manos and matades, mortars, grinding stones. So this is I want you guys to look at this picture. When I was a kid, I kept finding artifacts like this. So these kind of very shallow bowls with usually a groove around the top, and sometimes they were stained like that. Like I think this awesome one came from, my house was just, that I grew up at, was just a couple properties down from Vasquez Rocks. I think this came from our property. But if you look at that, without looking at the picture next to it, you wouldn't necessarily, you'd be, oh, it's probably used for grinding food, but it's very shallow. I don't know what this groove is for. It's actually a really neat hybrid tool that's called a hopper mortar. So asphaltum was used. Some of it was sourced locally, some of it sourced from the coast, from like Ventura. But it would have a bottomless basket attached to the top of it to deepen the bowl part. So between those two materials, which one do you think lasts hundreds of years out in the elements? The rock, right? So again, when I was growing up, there was a lot of people that would kind of boastfully like, oh, I know everything about the Indian people out here, and they didn't have baskets. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, we don't find any. Okay, well, then why do you find a bunch of these? So the humility is a very important part of when you guys teach these topics. But yeah, there used to be this big thought that, the Tataviam didn't use basketry. Of course they did. Why would they not? They have juncus and yucca and all these amazing fibrous plants around that are amazing for making baskets. So this one, these are Helen's. I don't know if you know what type of pine this was. Oh, okay. This is an oldie but a goodie. So you guys may have seen, and I didn't bring one with me, but you may have seen pine needle baskets. So you have some pine needles that are like a foot long or more. So these are really, they can be brittle, but if you can keep them pliable, they make really amazing baskets. Less common, but not impossible, is a yucca basket. Mostly juncus and different types of deer grass were used, but this is one that Diane from San Dimas made for me. It's just a little brush, but this is yucca. It's local yucca, so you can see the cordage around it. And I think you guys are going to do cordage, right? Yeah. So I'll save that for the expert because it hurts your hands a little bit. And so you can feel, this one's a little bit dry, but you can have yucca if you keep it pliable and kind of moisturized. This one's years old, but it's very fibrous, which is really interesting. And one thing that's really important that is really hard to come by is basketry, right? Like Leon Warden, with SCV History and SCV TV, he's an amazing basket person. If you have any questions about baskets, ask Leon, or we have an amazing volunteer with our group, Bryn Potter. She's an amazing basket expert. And basketry is a really special thing because it takes love and time and patience to do this, right? So I'm going to pass these two around. These are both contemporary Native Californian basket examples. This is like a coiled basket section, just a little mini one. So this is closer to the type that Tataviam basketry is. But I want you to look at how tight the weave is on both of these. This is a pine needle one, which is good. So look at, this is pine needle. This one is grass. But can your fingers do that? My fingers could not do that. Absolutely not. But we do have a few examples of Tataviam basketry. They're very, very hard to come by. So that circular one is the base. It's a fragment of a base of a bowl or a tray basket. And this was actually from Vasquez Rocks. It's not in our possession. We're trying to work with the person who has it to have a climate stabilized place to store it or display it because it's really amazing. But at least for now it's safe, it's stable, it's not degrading any more than it is. But this is, it looks like juncus and deer grass. And then this little one I think is still on display at La Brea Tar Pits of all places. But this is from Piru Creek, so out here in Santa Clarita with you guys, a little basketry fragment too.
That dates back to how old?
Huh?
How old were you?
I don't know. Neither of these have been dated, but Leon thinks, so this is a close view of this one. This one was found in the 70s, but it looks like well before European contact, so hundreds of years old. But you can see just what a beautiful piece this is, and the odds of it surviving is just amazing because we have extreme weather. It can be very wet, very hot, very dry, and those weather fluctuations usually don't do well to preserve, natural materials like that. But it's, basketry is really amazing. If you guys are interested in it, let us know and we'll connect you with the right people. That's one thing that there is not enough of is basket experts, basketry people. Oh yeah, you want to show them? We'll play Ring Around the Rosie with it.
Well, we have two main styles, and that's the coiled baskets, and that's what you're seeing there, and then twine. And this one I just took in from the next room. When you have school groups, if you have kids that are waiting, we keep some of the ropes here. You'd be surprised what kids don't know these days. Just to have rope go in and out, and they can see how you can make a twined basket. So we have this here, and it moves around. So I just wanted you to know that we have this available. It's normally kept in the other room in that corner.
Super cool. And not hard to, well, I guess the spacing you said was probably the hardest part to build.
This one was, I copied it. I saw it at a museum in Monterey, and I took pictures of it. My grandkids were playing with it, and they really loved it. And when I got home, I thought, gee, that's one thing that's missing from Placerita. They need a giant basket.
A giant basket.
And so with the pictures, I saw, there's 19 spokes in that circle. And it's, they have to be pretty good with math because you tried to divide a circle by 19. That was not an easy feat. That was the hardest thing in making this, was trying to get the measurements exact. And so I had permission from Monterey to make a duplicate of what they've got.
There you go. And it's perfect. I wouldn't have wanted to measure it though. We'll have one of our engineers. Is anybody an engineer in here? There's probably a few of you. Yeah, see, he's gonna do it. We got it. Raise your hand. I know. You're on my list now. It's okay. My husband builds airplanes too, so I'll make him do it. It's fine. So here's an example too. This is actually an African basket, but I like to use this one just to kind of pass around. So this is, a type of coiled basket too. So this would have been kind of a nice little, travel size. But also, so this basket fragment is about the size of the bottom of this. So that could have come from a tray basket that was like this big, which is pretty cool. And again, this is a coiled basket. It's African. Beautiful style though. These are great for teaching.
What was that made out of?
This is juncus and deer grass. And I wish we could get, maybe at some point, the further we go in time, the better we get about getting dating samples that are smaller. Because it used to be when they would radiocarbon or obsidian date something, they would absolutely destroy the sample. Like, you would have to sacrifice it to get the date and hope that you got a good date out of it. But for something like this, there's little pieces that are obviously parts of it are kind of breaking off, and it's been stored in a Riker case for like 50 years, a little glass cotton padded box. But at some point, depending on who owns the item, what the research purpose is, this may be dated at some point, which would be pretty cool. I'd be very curious to see. I mean, it's probably at least 500 years old, I would think. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So this is just kind of an example too. I don't know if, I feel like you guys had one of these. This is just twine, but this is an example of kind of a little tied pouch, a little basket. So I passed this around. This came with someone gave this to me. It came with like a bottle of wine or something in it. And they're like, oh, I feel like you would like this. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of a useful example of the different types of pouches you could have. Did you bring the rabbit blanket or no?
I have some.
Is it in there? I have a little one, but, oh, it's on the thing. So just to you can put your hand in here and kind of stretch it out. It's like a net, but different ways you can carry things. Oh yeah, there you go. So this is, I'll let Helen tell you what this is because it's super cool.
Well, this is a blanket that's made from rabbit. And it's like, well, how are you going to make a blanket that's big? Rabbits are here.
It's very tiny.
Are there. And so this is just demonstrating how it started out. It's made into strips. And then the strips are woven together. And should we pass that around?
Yeah, if you guys are good,
Okay.
And it's very soft, right? Because it's, rabbits, jackrabbits, cottontails are very plentiful and very, very soft, right? Like you're not going to take a porcupine and make a blanket. So things that were, the indigenous people didn't seek to make life more difficult. It seems like we do that to ourselves sometimes, but these I want to pass around. This is, again, from my friend Nick. This is a coast live oak bowl, which there was a tree that fell, and this was carved out of that. So this is a beautiful little bowl.
And nothing was wasted.
Nothing was wasted, that's for sure, yeah. Because it's one of those things, too, where if you, and it wasn't just necessarily an altruistic, like, consciously, we're going to use every piece because I'm a good person. You know what I mean? Like the way we kind of think of it now, it was just what you did. It was just ingrained that, these are all things that are useful, that this animal has all of these parts that, the sinew, the connective tissue, the flesh, even the brains, bone. All of these things have a different use and a different purpose. So it's helpful if all of us can kind of change our lenses like that a little bit. I mean, how many times have you guys eaten a cheeseburger or whatever and not even given a thought to where it came from? I know we're so go, go, go all the time, and we're so disconnected to our food and our textiles. Like, we don't know. I don't know, where in the world this cotton in my jeans grew. You know what I mean? But living in a way that they were connected to the land is something that the tribe still tries to live through and still teach to other people, because we would sure all be a lot better off if we lived that way and everything wasn't just expendable, So these I just want to pass around. These are obviously plant and animal based too. So these are, this one I actually made in a rattle workshop with the tribe, with Mark, the tribal vice president. So this has palm seeds in it from I think he got them down by Palm Desert area. And then, a gourd, and then leather. And he used a dowel, but you can use, any kind of other stick. This is a clapper stick, so an instrument. So this is just a little hollow piece. I don't know if this one was bamboo or arundo, but this would have been a native plant, obviously. And a little acorn cap on the end and a leather handle. So Diane Alarcon made this one too. My son, so you have to be gentle. My son, when he was a baby, loved to play with this, and he accidentally dropped it and he broke it. So I got him this one. This is actually a elk hide rattle. So this is a little baby one. And I got this from a lady in Northern California too, but we'll mess up Ron's audio and it's.
Can you explain another thing with the rattles? I helped a friend who was doing having to create a ceremonial rattle.
Mm-hmm.
And, you had different items that was in that. This one happened to be, you had to look for anthills of harvest ants. And when they're making their anthills, they haul out little pebbles that are annoying them. And so if you look on harvest anthills, you'll see a whole little scattering of pebbles around it. This particular ceremonial rattle had to be from that specific type of ant and the pebbles that they took out, and that's what went into it. And so everything had a purpose, It wasn't just, I'm taking a random this or that. There's a lot of, deliberate things. When you're talking about baskets, do you want to talk about how they cooked with baskets?
Oh, no, you do that. You do that.
Now?
Do you want to do it now or during yours?
I can.
Okay,
Okay.
well, hold on.
10:25, so we'll go on break shortly.
If you wanna-
So we'll do this one.
I gotta get you a mic if you're gonna be talking.
I'm not going to be talking too
Well,
long.
it's enough to mess up my video.
Oh,
Oh, she's getting mic'd up.
Well, she's talking.
I said I'm not talking that much. I really don't.
You're talking enough.
So if you're going to cook, they didn't have cook pots. They didn't have
Copper.
any of that. And in fact, they didn't cook with stone pots. They cooked with woven baskets like what you're talking about. So how are you going to take this fiber pot on top of fire and not get it to burn, right?
After all that work.
After all that work, you have to be really careful with it. Well, I'll tell you. And it's so clever. And we actually sometimes use that technique today. So they would take rocks. They would find rocks that were smooth and flat, and they're not going to explode in heat, and put that inside. They'd have their pot, and then they'd have a series of rocks, and the rocks would go inside the fire. And then when the rocks were hot, they took something like this, which is willow, that has been bent over, and you have the yucca that made it into a hoop. And they would use this because we're not going to be burning our hands. And so you would take the hot rocks, put it inside the pot of water and whatever food that you're cooking inside, and then once those start to get cool, you would scoop the cool ones out, put them back in the fire, get the new hot rocks in. So,
which is pretty amazing to like. Would any of us know how to do that? I mean,
well, sometimes if I'm lazy and I want to reheat up soup, there you go. I heat up my baked potato, and it's steaming hot, and I cut it up in pieces and throw it into my cold soup, and it's warm.
There you go.
And so today we still use it.
And I wish I had a picture, but if you guys come to Vasquez Rocks too, another cooking technique that they used a lot was earth ovens. So where, kind of like if you go to, some of the Polynesian islands or you go to Hawaii, digging a hole or a little pit, lining it with rocks, doing your fire, and then covering it that way. So there's a lot of earth oven sites and fire-affected rock at Vasquez Rocks, which is pretty cool. And you can see the soil is black. It's been burned. So you can tell where and those sites are usually near the mortars where there was grinding the rock, because why would you, we always tell, when we teach kids, we say, hey, if you were cutting up a potato to make, a baked potato or soup or whatever, one, you don't eat it raw because that's going to hurt your stomach and taste terrible. So you have to cook it, you have to prepare it, right? But would you, in your kitchen, do you walk a mile in between where you get your potato, wash it, and then where you cook it? No, it's all next to each other. So at Vasquez Rocks, that's what we have too. And at some of the village sites out here in Santa Clarita, it's the same type of thing. You're going to see these food prep or kind of kitchen areas that are all close together. So I feel like you guys have been very patient. We still have some, a bit of stuff to go over when we come back. But I do want to open it up at the end too for Q&A. So if you have something in your hand, raise it up really quick. And a couple of us will come. Maybe I'll implore Ken to come help me again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did everybody get one of these to hand out?
Oh, okay.
We had technical difficulties trying to make copies.
And I can also email it too. It's a beautiful, full color PDF. If you Google the name of it too, it'll come up. So.
Is there a site for this?
Yeah, it's through the Native American Indian Commission through LA County. So literally, if you just Google the title, "We Are Still Here, LA County," it'll pop up. It's one of the first things that pops up. And I can also email it to Ron. And, yeah. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we come back. Any questions before? I know there's always questions. I'm always here. I'm at the Rocks 24/7 too. So if you have one of the items, show and tell, and if you didn't get to see it yet, just raise it up and we'll make sure you see it before you go. Thank you. It's always good, man. I don't know. It's dangerous coming over here. Okay, so it is 10:57, so we'll just kind of zip through. I could keep you guys here all day because there's a lot to talk about. But we'll just kind of hit on some of the big points. And then if you guys have any questions about anything, we'll try to do a little Q&A at the end. And then I'm totally fine hanging back too if you guys want to chat about anything or if you have any other questions. And like I said, you guys know where to find me. So I am there all the time. I was there till 9 o'clock the other night just working on paperwork. So I'm there all the time. So I want to show you this, kind of jumping back into our conversation about food and materials. This is a really neat kind of a Tatavium, I guess you could say tablescape almost, that Leon put together quite a while ago, 20 years ago. But this shows, some of the food processing implements and basketry and food items. So obviously everything is native materials. Everything is what you have. And I was talking to one of our lovely potential docents. And just talking about, now today you think about the health of the Native community, and unfortunately there are a lot of issues with things like diabetes, obesity, disease. And if you guys, what would happen if you evolved, you as a person, kind of close your eyes and think about it. What if you and all of your ancestors for dozens of generations evolved in one place with specific plants, right? Your DNA would come to rely on those. So the example I give too is that, which is such a bummer. So I have no Asian or Hispanic genetics, right? I'm very Western European and Greek. I cannot eat rice. Rice makes me physically sick. I know. There's some of you are like, what? Yes, I know. It is such a bummer because my body, my ancestors did not have rice, right? In Western Europe, my Scottish ancestors were not eating rice. There were other things, probably like haggis. I could probably eat haggis and I'm fine. I'm sorry if anybody likes it. I've never had it. But so with the colonization that came after Spanish and European contact, almost every lifeway was cut off. So think of those foods that you relied on forever and ever and ever, that your body, your ancestors' bodies, how you got energy, what your stomach, your digestive tract was used to. What if that was like ripped away from you and you were forced to have entirely become reliant upon these foods that you had never, any of your family had never eaten before, right? It makes you sick. And taking away, and some people tolerate it well. My husband's mostly a garbage pit, I am not. Some of us are more sensitive than others, but it's just, taking away those, and they had developed this relationship, and Helen will, I'm sure, talk about this relationship with native plants for so long that they knew the ins and outs. You knew exactly when the day turned, okay, today is the good day for holly leaf cherry. Today's, the good day to process acorns. Oh, we waited a little bit too long for this grove. They're kind of past, the point where we can really use them safely. And all of that knowledge, we call that traditional ecological knowledge, TEK. So I want to show you guys a couple of books too. So if you guys don't have this for your library, it'd be a really good one to get. Actually, both of these. So obviously, who's read this one? Oh, you got, okay, book club. Everybody that's read this, nobody doesn't love this book. Bonus points is I love to listen to the audiobook of it because she reads it, Professor Kimmerer, and she has the most amazing way of telling her stories. But this is a really beautiful book. And her first book is called Gathering Moss, which is also amazing. So Braiding Sweetgrass, you can get these wherever. You can get them secondhand. I buy most of my books secondhand. But she's a professor. She's native, but she's also a professor and a botanist. And she's amazing. So this ties in a lot of, her argument is like, hey, you can have traditional ecological knowledge and scientific knowledge, and they build upon each other really well. But there's always this divide of, dismissing native voices when they have a lot to give. So this book is amazing. And this thing is huge. Has anybody read this? I will be surprised. I have not read this all the way through. Tending the Wild. There's also a really great, if you guys ever do movie night too, there's a great series, and I think they combined it into it's like a PBS hour-long presentation on it. So this book, it's called Native American Knowledge in the Management of California's Natural Resources. So this talks about that native populations were not just passive, didn't sit off to the side with native landscapes and native ecosystems before contact, so that humans were a part of it, like any other animal would be, right? We talk about trophic cascade and energy and the flow of energy through ecosystems. Humans are a part of that. We, unfortunately, today cause a lot of chaos with it, which is unfortunate. But, if you look at even just around this room, it's all, we were a part, native people were always a part of that. So I can pass these books around if you want to take like a picture of them. This book is amazing. It's obviously very dense. It's like 700 pages or some crazy thing, 500 pages. But it has a lot of great sections that you can use for reference. But this book is absolutely amazing. So she is not native. She worked with a lot of native populations. She's a professor too, PhD. And Robin Kimmerer is a professor and she's native. Very smart lady. This is an amazing book. Yeah, it's so good. And then here's another, may as well pass these around while you guys are in book mode. And you can feel free to take pictures of the cover or anything too. This is a newer book, We Are the Land, which is really great. So this talks about a lot of the California Native experience. So what I'm gonna kind of have to like rush over, a lot of that's in this book. And this was beautifully done too. And then this is really exciting. So Dwayne Champagne and Carol Goldberg, professors with UCLA, wrote this with the tribe. So this is a very dense book too. It's not necessarily as like flowery like literally as braiding sweetgrass, which talks a lot about plants. But this talks about the lineages and the organization and the history of the tribe. So this is a really great one too. And if you can go to their website and the tribe's website and buy this, and it helps with, tribal programs and resources. So that's a great book also. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go upside down. So we'll talk real quick. We'll finish our convo about artifact types. So groundstone, where I grew up, was right next to Vasquez Rocks, and where my house was part of a big food processing area. So we would find, not all of these, some of these came from where my property was, but big, heavy groundstone items. So groundstone is stone that is ground. There you go. We can pass this one around if you want. This one's kind of heavy, so if you guys want to, and I wonder why I have like tendonitis in my elbow. So this is a really big pestle. It broke right here, but you can see how nicely shaped this one is. There's a lot of examples of artifacts in this area. Areas where you have hard foods that you have to process, acorns, nuts, seeds, things like that. You'll have stone items, and sometimes a big heavy stone item, depending on your build, your size. Me and Olivia are obviously built very differently. Olivia may use something that's a little more smaller and petite, or if you have, something that's larger, it can also help do the work for you, which is where the donut stones come in handy. So yours is actually really similar to mine. I won't mix them up, I promise. So this one came from the Natural History Museum. It was sitting in a closet, so they de-extensioned a lot of stuff, so they let us have it. But they're both the same material, which is cool, that volcanic kind of basaltic rock. So these are a donut stone or a digging, a weight for a digging stick. So it would do, this takes a lot. It's like if you guys have ever used a rock breaker, they're very heavy, but you use the weight to help you, right? So this was kind of the same concept. We'll pass this one. This one's very donutty. This one's really cute. You could put frosting on that. So if you think of like a garden implement, you know how like sometimes, especially if the ground, like where I live, the ground is really hard. If it's really light, you have to bear the brunt of really pushing. But if something is heavy and you can kind of let it fall, it's like a hammer, use a heavier weighted hammer, like a sledgehammer. It does a lot of the work for you. And it's the same thing with these. So this one's not too terribly dense and heavy. This is like a granitic type material. This was found in the Agua Dulce area from that village. So this is a pestle. And that would go with something that was deeper like this. This is a really dense, heavy material, and this was so deep under a sedimentary layer, they think this one is at least 10,000 years old, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, pretty cool. This one is huge. So this is my dad's elbow. My dad passed about 20 years ago, but he was a big dude. Like he was tall, strong, thick arms and legs. This thing weighed over 100 pounds, this bowl. It was like this tall, about this big around. He makes it not look very but his forearm was way bigger than mine. He's a baby. My baby just turned 4 and he's giant. Okay, so these are all groundstone, right? This is what we call a grinding slab or a milling slab. This isn't necessarily, these were found together, but this wouldn't necessarily be the artifact that was used for this. So this was just used for grinding, different harder foods, things like acorns, polyleaf cherry, juniper, things like that. This one is big, so I forget, it's 26 inches wide. And there's another one that was found right behind the interpretive center that's similar to this. So that one is on display, but it's kind of a match to this one. You can have a mono and a matate. Some of them are curved, some are flat. Some of them are kind of more bowl-shaped, like that. And then some are this is like a perfect bowl, and there's been a few of these that have been found. This one actually has a big mark on it from a tractor because a local grader was doing work, and it rolled out of the excavator bucket. And they were like, stop, oh my gosh! But COC actually has kind of a twin to that one that was donated by you guys have the Walkers, we have the Tony Craig family, and then the Asher family. So the Ashers donated a bowl like that to College of the Canyons. So these are super cool. Who's a lefty in this room? See, there's always, are you the only one? Isn't Renee a lefty, or am I imagining that? Renee might be a lefty. So for you lefty, this one is more of a ambidextrous one. So this is a little mono, but you can feel where the surface, you can see the polish too, where it's been worn away. But if we think like, oh, that's so nice and smooth, but if you guys are processing a hard food, smooth doesn't really get it good. You know, that's like having dull teeth on your blender, right? So these also have peck marks. So if you feel the middle, it would have been hit with another rock to rough it up again. So it has peck marks on both sides, which is kind of cool. Mostly, you can really tell on the one side. And this one, you can see kind of the way the mineral has kind of crusted on the side. So this one sat on the surface for a long time. And this is a type of granitic material. This one is cool. So lefty might not be able to appreciate this one as much. But this one is for a right-hander. So I want you to feel this one around in your hand until you have it fit. There's a little thumb spot right there, which is amazing. And this one, so these are kind of, this one's really slick, so be careful. Try not to drop them. This one's kind of big too, so if you have teeny tiny hands, this might not be the best, you know, fit for you, but this one's really smooth. But yeah, just hold it in your hand and just feel like whoever made this, it's like very custom fitting. Okay. Cool. And then
We were working just recently in Vasquez. It's like the first group of houses that are right next to Vasquez.
uh-huh.
And just dug up a pestle.
Oh, in Asher Ranch?
Right, yeah.
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 It's called Asher Ranch, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's where a lot of these came from. That's where this came from. There's a lot, yeah. So there's, well, that's where, so the Asher family sold most of their property to the county, but they held back that one part, and it was developed for, I forget how many, 8 or 9 houses? There's not that many in there.
Yeah.
But almost every single one, man, they found all kinds of brownstone stuff over there. Yeah, and they're beautiful. Yeah, well, we'll connect, and I can look at it and tell you guys what it is.
I'll bring it up.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, and a lot of them are food processing, so you can tell. And that was just across from where I grew up, and it was all like this big, huge food processing area. So here's that giant bowl again, you can kind of see, and then that's a little teeny tiny one that's only about 4 or 5 inches across. And we have one at the Rocks. I was going to bring it, but I don't want it to break or anything. But it's this big, little tiny bowl. So we looked at these already. This is the bedrock mortars. So these are, you know, that one is about 6 inches across or so and pretty deep. You could use a pestle for some of those as they get deeper and deeper over time. Yes?
I have a question since we're talking about food and food processing. Was there any danger because of droughts or very hard times for the people to gather the food? I mean, it seems like they had a really diverse diet that would accommodate changes where sometimes one plant might not be as available as others, but was it basically you could find all that you need, or were there hard times as well?
I'm sure there were. And you do, you know, based on the human skeletal remains, the lifespan wasn't as long, obviously. Using stone implements to grind your food obviously could leave, you know, bits of stone in your food, really wore their teeth. So some people did die of you know, issues with dental health. Because you guys know, if you get down and you expose, you know, you start losing teeth, you can't stay healthy for long if your mouth is not healthy, right? So in terms of drought, you know, we've really, that's why they say we're in a new period. We're in the Anthropocene, because we are accelerating climate change so quickly and so dramatically. But there was always weather patterns. You know, we had ice ages, we had periods, you know, we have these 100-year floods, right? 1938, 1968, 1998, hint, hint, like if anybody lives in the Wash, in the Santa Clara River, it would move. So that always did happen, you know, like with the LA River, that's why they channelized it, because it would normally flood and it would change course and it would move, enrich the soil while it did it. But yeah, so that was part of it, but that was part of, so it's like with us, you would have loss of life, I'm sure. You know, you could have high mortality for babies that, you know, maybe don't make it because of really cold or really hot temperatures, or, but that was part of the communal setting, was that everybody helped the group. Everything was to help the group. Nobody, and that's the thing that's kind of sad for us living in a, here I'm on my soapbox, in a very capitalistic colonial society. Everything we do, how many of you get to keep 100% of the money you make? None of us, right? We give a lot of it back, and sometimes we feel like we don't even receive that much back, for the services. But in Indigenous society, like Tataviam society here, everybody helped, and you weren't slaving away 24 hours a day either. So like when you would prep your acorns, sure, you may have been busy for part of that season when you were doing acorn processing to stabilize, but you weren't doing it 365 days a year either. So there was different foods that were, acorns you would harvest a small window, holly leaf cherry is a small window.
Look at juniper.
Yeah.
We were talking about juniper was to reduce having a high birth rate.
Yeah, which is interesting, and Helen will talk about a lot of the intricacies of uses of native plants, but it's just, in times like with us, birth control can be an important thing too, because hey, if you're going into really violent storms or a drought period, like, yeah, you may want to curb having babies, and juniper, which is funny because like that one I didn't know for a long time either, that juniper can help kind of be a suppressant for like a birth control.
And they had a number of different plants that worked to suppress birth.
Yeah.
Juniper was one. Ergo, found on our giant wild rye, was another one.
And we have lots of that too up there.
Mugwort.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. So they had, there was a number of different plants. If they didn't want to get pregnant, they had it down pretty well.
Yeah, which is amazing. And again, that's why during the mission period, all of those ties were broken. All of that ancestral knowledge that had been hard won for thousands of years and carefully figured out was all broken. Like imagine you guys woke up tomorrow on an alien planet and you didn't know, say you had a broken leg, it really hurt. You had no idea what to use. It was the same thing, like when all those ties were broken, it was devastating and continues to be devastating because you have, I don't know if you talk about this in yours, the introduction of really invasive non-native plants, right? Like mustard. Would you rather have, your really useful buckwheats and your annuals that you know exactly what to do with the flowers and the seeds, or this really aggressive, invasive foreign plant that it's like, I don't know what to do with this thing. Is it poisonous? I don't know. Can I eat it? I'm not sure. And we still battle with that, and it's really, really something it's a big topic. Again, that's why I'm glad you guys do an ethnobotany, because it's something else, man. Okay, so we'll kind of skip around a little bit. We already did baskets, which is good. So real quick, we'll talk about flaked stone. So I already passed that one around to you guys with the obsidian. And this also has obsidian, and this has a couple different types of points. Some of these bigger ones, these are all mostly flaked also. So you can see some of them are like palm size or a little bit bigger. So those we call like a biface. They could have been for, a spear point, but typically we think Tataviam here relied on using bows and arrows and less like a hand tool with, a big blade on the end of it. If you were hunting mammoths and things, that was really handy. But a lot of these, and when you used a point, this is something we always talk about, you could reuse a point. Say it breaks on the tip. There's good evidence that shows that it was worked down, it was just reduced down to a smaller point. So you can start with something big, you use it, it fractures, you use it, rework it, it breaks, rework it. And then you can end up too with little, they call these like a bird point. These little teeny tiny ones, which very fine tuned. If anybody could hit anything with one of these, I would be massively impressed. It's interesting because when I find most of these, most of their tips are intact. So I don't know what academia says about what these were used for. I haven't really been able to find a whole lot. I kind of wonder too if they were like maybe ornamental or for practice, or because some of these too you might find something. Because I started to learn flint napping, or mostly obsidian napping, and you have to learn. Again, you're not just born knowing how to do it. So you could find one that maybe isn't real. Even it's like, oh, someone was using that for practice. But some of the workmanship in these is absolutely amazing. To take a big hunk of stone from hundreds of miles away and fine tune it into something like these little ones. And these are some Spanish and European trade beads that were found in Agua Dulce. And then some little shell beads right here. So this one I don't usually pass around because this one's pretty sensitive. So if you guys want to look at this one, you're more than welcome to come up and look at it. Because if these were gone, then I would never be able to get them back again. But really, really cool though. And these were found next door to Vasquez Rocks, like right across the street. So this one, again, big and chunky, but I'll pass it around. And then we'll also pass, do you want to talk about the lovely abalone? I love making Helen do stuff. I love it. She's so good, isn't she?
The abalone used to be found for the whole West Coast, and it was in abundance. It was a regular food thing out here, and we overfished it to where there wasn't a whole lot. And so they're back collecting abalone again, but it's not our native. It was hunted to or harvested to extinction.
Yeah.
But it was, when they collected the abalone, it was done sustainably.
Yeah.
So it didn't deplete the supply. You'll see on some Native American gravestones abalone, and that was representative of life. That particular abalone shell, a friend of mine, well, my neighbor is Apache, and he showed me how this is done correctly. And he showed how you sand it up just a little bit and you oil it, and you get this beautiful flesh color comes out of it off of the shell. And the holes that's on the abalone are for all your body functions. It, it's
amazing.
Eat, drink, have sex.
Yeah, all the stuff.
Everything is in those holes. That's your life.
And this, if you can picture the size of the critter living in here, is amazing. But it is, and like some of you guys, if you grew up in Southern California, like a lot of my professors that grew up out here were like, oh yeah, we used to just free dive when I was a kid in the 70s. And so even then in recent decades, this has just been absolutely poached to the brink of not existing anymore. So if there's any abalone advocates, you are very welcome. So this is a really big one that Ms. Helen brought, which is amazing. These are two that were from my collection. This one I just got recently, so this is red abalone also. This one has like a glaze on it, so it's really glossy, but you can see that kind of red color and texture. And then this one, Elder Julia Bogany actually made this one, and I got it in LA. So you can see little tiny, this is how they start, like a little tiny baby. Tiny apple, they're actually smaller than that. And then some Olivella type beads too. So these are new, but that shell, that would have been an old critter that was in there.
They would use that for decorations on their ceremonial outfits or anything. Did it have to do with, I know bison teeth sewn on, it's like glorified or a little bit higher up, maybe more like the Kennedys than
Yeah.
the simpletons, right?
Yeah, and social rank, and that was one of our new friends was asking me about that too. That's one of the things that, those are good questions for like Rudy Jr., the tribal president, and some of the elders, because every lineage probably practiced a little bit differently, and we don't know a lot of the time. But there was, some hierarchy, but it wasn't so defined and harsh and unsupportive as ours is, right? Like, we have a huge percentage of our population that falls through the bottom, falls through the cracks, right? Even children. You have children that are living in LA County below the poverty line, next to some of the highest, real estate prices that there are. And a lot of them, so LA County has the largest and most diverse Native population in the United States too. And many of them are living in poverty. So that's why the tribe works really hard on social welfare programs, because it's just, we are so pushed apart from each other. And again, that's what a capitalistic society does. And that's what a patriarchal society does, right? And, matrilineal lines were really important to these Native lineages too. A lot of them followed the mother's lines, which is really, which makes sense. I'm sorry, guys, we do all the hard work, man. My kid was breech, I had to work really hard for that little kid. But it's one of those things where in one way we don't know, but there are a lot of sites that, depending on burials, what regalia they were buried with, you can tell different rankings and different, if someone was more of a political leader or a spiritual leader, a respected elder. And there are cases too, rare cases, and one was in the Vasquez Rocks area where there is a female burial where it looked punitive, it looked like punishment. So it's interesting. They had a lot of the same issues that we have, conflict and everything like that. But overall, their society was much more supportive of each other and encompassing of each other than ours. Because unfortunately for us, and not necessarily people in this room, because you guys are here, but it's kind of every person for themselves a lot of the time for us. It's competitive, it's cutthroat, but life was not like that here then. So yeah, I know it's an interesting thing though, but that's a good one to talk with the tribe about too. So this is interesting. So trade was a really big thing. I was always taught, like Charlie and a lot of the elders always talked about Vasquez Rocks being kind of the village of Vasquez being like the hub of a wheel, right? So all these trade networks and trade routes from, like main roads that we have like right now, like San Francisco Canyon, Bouquet Canyon, Soledad Canyon, these were old footpaths and old trade routes. So Vasquez, you had people coming from the desert, from the coast, from the northern coast, from down south, and it's evident in what has been found in that area. So obviously obsidian, we don't have naturally occurring obsidian. It's several hundred miles away, but the amount of it that was there even when I was a kid was staggering. Now, of course, it's been popular to pick up artifacts. People take a lot of stuff home, but it's really amazing. And this one, you can't tell in this picture. I have a dog, and she's all black, and she hardly shows up in pictures. But obsidian is the same way. But this one is on display in the Interpretive Center. So I don't know if you can tell, some of the flakes are really shiny, and some of them are very dull. So someone made this, dropped it on the ground for like a couple hundred years, and then someone else picked it up and worked it, which is amazing. So in theory, you could date, while damaging it, so we won't do it, but you could date how old the newer flakes are versus the older flakes, which is really neat. And then, so that's a piece of abalone that was found right in the Agua Dulce Village area, which obviously did not come from here. We found fossilized shark's teeth with shell items, so not necessarily. So you guys, I'm pretty sure Placerita Canyon was, but a lot of Santa Clarita was actually underwater, so you guys have whale fossils in your hills and all kinds of cool stuff. We were never underwater up where I am, so we were like beachfront. So I have land mammal fossils, and you guys have like ocean fossils. But we'll find like shark's teeth and different trade items like that, right? Abalone, different types of abalone, which as I'm sure, very much a treat. I don't know if I've never eaten abalone, but if you have it, it was very much, I'm sure, a very welcome treat back then. Ceramic items, we don't have a ton of these, but it's not local clay. So that one came from the Southwest, which is really neat. It's about this big. It's on display in the Interpretive Center. I don't know exactly what it is. It almost looks like a shot glass. It's like you could put your thumb in it. I don't know if it was the start of like a pipe that wasn't finished or what, but it's very polished red clay. It's really beautiful. Shell beads, again, shell didn't just grow out of the ground out here. And I do have, so I can pass this one around. I don't have the provenience for this, unfortunately. So talking about collecting, so I'm going to jump ahead really fast and talk about, sorry if I'm all over the place, you guys. Hopefully you can follow mostly. Let me go around this way. I'm looking at it upside down. So has anybody heard of Bowers Cave?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you think of Bowers Cave, what does it make you think of?
Chiquita landfill.
It makes me sad as heck when I think about it. So scvhistory.com has a lot of really good information on Bowers Cave. But basically in 1884, these two little rancher boys, brothers, came upon this cave. It's where the Chiquita Canyon landfill is now. I've never been there. It's not accessible really. But it was packed with artifacts, amazing, amazing artifacts that were Tatavium. So basketry, flicker, like if you guys, have you seen like a northern flicker, beautiful birds. different bands and implements made from feathers, 45 bone whistles, bull roars like you were talking about, ritual staffs, the sun sticks that you use for like solstice ceremonies. So all these like really intricate, well-preserved artifacts, right? Do you think they're still here? Do you think they're in the tribe's possession? Of course not. Do you know where they are? They're in a museum. They're in storage at a museum on the other side of the country at Harvard. Why? Yeah, exactly. So that said, I'm going to pass around this little vial of shell beads. No idea. I got this from the Natural History Museum. This was, again, they were de-extensioning some of the older collections. This has no provenience. And it's really unfortunate, you know. Yeah. It has no, we have no record of where this came from. Yeah, sorry, it's an archaeological thing. But with these, and that's the thing too, if you can impress upon your visitors, we really have to do it at Vasquez Rocks because it's a village site, and there people can find artifacts. Leaving no trace, you know, about not taking things home, because like these, a lot of these ones, people will pick something up like this, oh cool, and then you know what it becomes in a year is a doorstop, and then Aunt Sally passes away and she gives it to her nieces and nephews who don't really want it, don't know where it came from, so then it comes up for sale on like Craigslist, and it's like grinding rock, and it's like you don't know if it's 500 miles from home, you don't know where it came from or where it was found, and it doesn't mean anything then, you know. But knowing what this was and where it came from and what layer of the soil it was in, was it with a burial? Was it with shell beads? Was it with a bunch of other food processing items? So it loses its voice and it loses its story. So that's a big thing that you guys can convey to your students and your adults too, because adults, they probably grew up trying to collect artifacts and stuff too. It's just that it's not ours. It's cool, you know, take a picture, look at it, you know, enjoy it. Tell a ranger if you need to, but don't take it away from, because you're cutting it off from the rest of its life, and we can never get that back. I think, did you have a question?
I was just going to ask, I mean, if we were out and about and we did find an artifact, we like take a photo, use our
Yeah.
phone, do the GPS.
Yeah,
location,
exactly.
Then go back to the ranger station or gift shop or whatever and say, I found this is where it is.
Yeah, that's really helpful for me.
Roped off or...
Exactly. Or if it's something that it can stay out in the field, we can kind of camouflage it, you know, hide it obscure it under a tree or something. But if it's something that's really sensitive, like shell beads or some basketry or something that can disappear, we GPS it, make a site record out of it, you know, and do it the right way. So yeah, if you guys ever...
Be careful if you found something and you take a picture of it, because unless you have it obscured, there's data on your picture that will give the location where you found it.
Or like at Vasquez Rocks, it's really easy to figure out where a picture was taken with the rocks, you know? So there are ways to, you know, overall it's best practice to like just don't post it, you know? Sometimes
I meant for the ranger.
Yeah, and that's totally fine, but...
so they can go find it, not post it or anything.
Well, you guys know, sometimes people post like, oh, hey, there's frogs in the pond right here, and then it goes on Facebook, and then everybody tramples the poor frogs, like, or takes it like, oh, I'm gonna get a pet frog. So that happens a lot. So it's just, you know, be cognizant of people. Most people mean well, but they can be a bull in a china shop. Yeah, so you guys back here. Either one. I'll let you fight it out.
I was just going to ask about this cave. Was it a ceremonial place, a place where they made this stuff, or stored
So
stuff?
that we don't know for sure. We don't know, and we'll probably never know, which is really unfortunate. So let me show you a picture of what the stuff looks like. So big, beautiful. This is a really tall, thin picture. So this is the top of that. So they were on display for a time, like in the 50s. I don't know when they came off display. Leon probably knows. But all of these amazing items, all of these bone tools and whistles, all of these feathered pieces. Like picture these like with a northern flicker, like the orange and all these beautiful, vibrant feathers. So we don't know if they were stored, and this is where like making assumptions can be dangerous, you know, because sometimes people say, oh yeah, they were storing it there and da-da-da-da. It's like, we don't know that. Why are you saying that for sure? we can make guesses, and you can engage the kids too. Like, so when you're dealing with talking about archaeology or native history, stuff like that, you can show them a few things, or like you can show them, hey, look at this thing. What do you think this was for? And like hands-on stuff is great. Obviously unfortunately, there's a lot of artifacts that don't have, like, do you know where this one came from? Mine either. Mine just said Southern California, and it's a shame, but stuff like this, especially things that are durable, like this is pretty hard to break. Somebody could still break it, but if you have a group of your kids or the school kids or the public or families, whatever, you can show it to them, and it's kind of fun just to get them talking about it and have each of them make a guess to what they think it was for. Because this one, would you have guessed what this was? I probably wouldn't have, but like a fishing net weight, or there's a million different things, and kids are very creative, so it's fun to just, and sometimes, hey, what are your theories on this, or you can give them, hey, we know that they dug in the ground and that they helped propagate different plants, and that they use sticks for digging, so what do you think maybe then this was for? So you can just kind of give them some of what we know, and then they can make guesses, and that's part of the practice of, see, now I mixed them up. This is yours. Oh, no, that one's mine. It's yours. Oh, my God. Mine's more square. Hers is really round. Ken's got it. See? Okay. Oh, my gosh. Nobody should put me in charge of anything. So anyways, Bowers Cave is a very tragic thing, but it's a really great rabbit hole to go down if you guys want to learn more. But basically, these are sitting in storage, and I hope in my lifetime they come back, because they should come back. The tribe's not currently, it's called a repository, where you can safely store artifacts, secure and climate controlled. So the tribe is currently not one. I, again, hope in my lifetime over the next even 10 years or so that the tribe can become one, and get some of these back home, because it's good that they're being preserved, but at the same time, we can't even get eyes on them. So it's like, do we know that they're safe? Do we know that they're secure, climate controlled, like not getting moth-eaten or anything like that?
Question this?
Yeah.
So on the topic of artifacts
Mm-hmm.
and your expertise in being an archaeologist, when you're finding these types of artifacts, is there a proper procedure or conduct that you have to do afterwards? Do you let the tribes know, or do you report it to academia? Like, how does that work?
That's a really good, it's a good question. It depends. Unfortunately, there's a lot of, if you find artifacts on your private property, if they're not burial related, if it's not like human remains or a funerary object, we call it, there's not as much protections around those. So if you, like in Asher Ranch, if you find a big groundstone matate, there's not a lot of most people hopefully know to do the right thing and say or contact maybe your local archaeological department, or like us or the tribe, and say, hey, I found this, and maybe document it. Keep the information with it. Like, how did we find it? Where was it? Ideally, things will be cataloged. So a lot of the stuff that's in my family's care so they're numbered, they're cataloged. We put as much information with it as we could. They're photographed. They're stored properly. But a lot of stuff, this is a little bit of an extreme version. Have you guys been to Bloom Ranch in Acton? It's super cool. So this is what I've noticed happen. So this is a little extreme. This is a wall. So Bloom Ranch is a really cool historic homestead. So it was homesteaded in 1890 or 1891. And the patriarch of the family was a stonemason. And their house sat on a village site that was right by the river. Beautiful area. And you can still go there today. And other families bought it, and they keep it up and running. But these are all pestles, different groundstone artifacts, and they're in the concrete wall. So these will never come out. It's cool look. I mean, that slab is big. Like, these are huge. These are this is much bigger than this one. So anyways, what I've seen in Agua Dulce, especially because Agua Dulce became more developed in the, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And like Asher Ranch, because a lot of the stuff was close to the ground surface, as people would grade for their houses, their pools, whatever, all of this stuff pops up. And most of the time, people kind of would hang on to it. Some people would sell it. Oh, Tataviam Indian artifacts, and they would sell them in the newspaper. And they lose track of what they are. But what you should, what I do is, and I tell, if somebody comes up to me and says that, like, I'll catalog it, you know, like I will document it, take a photo of it, give them, you know, and you can use different forms, but basically, like a paper that has a photo record of it and says, hey, this is when it was found, where it was found, maybe how far down, was anything with it. And I always let the tribe know. I have a really close working relationship with the tribe, and we do with our department anyway. But I always let them know, just to say like, hey, here's this record if you want to put it on file. You don't have to, like, there's no law that says you have to do that, but I think it's a courtesy thing, you know. But the best thing you can do is to let them know. You can even let some of your local like out here, the Historical Society. So me and my friend Ann Stanzel are archaeologists that volunteer over there too. So we work with the tribe and, you know, just make sure it's preserved. If the person is like, hey, this whole property is getting blown up, I need to get this stuff out of here, we can work with you on what to do with it properly, you know. But unfortunately, a lot of the time it's like, oh, this was at grandma's house, I don't know what it is, which is really sad. I know, it bothers me too. I know. So how are we on time? Okay, so we got about 20 more minutes, so I'm going to run through, and again, if you guys have any questions on artifacts or anything, please do let me know. If you ever want to come to the Interpretive Center, let me know, and I can show you some of the stuff there that's on display. Yeah, and I'll show you some of these too. So after, we'll run through the mission period. It deserves a lot of time on its own, but you know, it's one of those things where I can't do it a lot of justice in about 20 minutes. But so European contact in this area occurred roughly in the early 1770s. Is so far from the documentation we have what is agreed upon in the Santa Clarita, Agua Dulce, Antelope Valley areas. So this was the captain. Interestingly, they were sent out, if you read the bottom one, he was sent out to look for 6 missing soldiers who went missing with 6 missing young native ladies of the same age. And so they used it as kind of an expedition through the region. I don't ever know what happened with the soldiers and the girls, but so this is where we think too the name Agua Dulce, where I live, comes from. So he noted that in his journals. I don't know if that's true or not, but you know. So there's a face to kind of see what early European contact here looked like. So pretty early on in 1769, that's a good number for you guys to remember. That's when the Spanish mission system was created. This began a huge decimation of native populations here and along the coast. There were 21 missions all the way up and down the coast. We were kind of more, you know, down to San Diego, so we were kind of more towards the bottom. Ours actually came later in line. Ours was the 17th mission, Mission San Fernando, in 1797. And there were various lineages and tribal groups that were either coerced or forcefully taken. So some of the records will say too, oh, they came willingly. Okay, well, you took their kid to the mission. So if you take my son, I'm going too, obviously, you know. So this can be a very contentious history. It is a very contentious history because this has been very, a lot of it's been glazed over and made to not be as ugly as it actually was. This was an extremely, it makes me want to cry thinking about it, extremely violent. People were killed, women were raped, children were forcefully taken from their parents, children were beaten for talking to their parents. They were beaten for using their given names, for speaking their language. They were forced to eat food that they had never had before. You know, their diet was greatly reduced, you know, turned into beef and some of these imported agricultural things. And they were used for labor. It wasn't this altruistic, like, oh, let's just bring in the native people and everything's going to be great. It was like, oh no, we need a workforce to run this massive agricultural system that we're setting up. And that's why Mission San Fernando, where it is in the San Fernando Valley, you guys know it's like the temperature is more moderate there. There's a lot of groundwater. It's beautiful over there. Really urbanized now, but it's beautiful. And if you haven't been to the San Fernando Mission, you definitely should. It's a very heavy thing when you go there, especially if you know what occurred. But the tribal headquarters is nearby, and they're working with the new. I forget what I don't know if he's a bishop. the guy that's overseeing the San Fernando mission now. And they're leaning pressure on, hey, you have a lot of our ancestors buried here in unmarked graves even, you know, and that's still, it's still sometimes like pulling teeth to get that even acknowledged. But working on it. So for the amount of damage that the mission system caused, it actually wasn't even up and running very long. So you guys know California exchanged hands several times. And it was and is like in this report that I kind of forgot to talk to you guys about, but if you want to read this, this is also online too. If we ran out of copies, it's online. You can Google it and it comes right up because it just came out recently, or I can email it to Ron and he'll send it to everybody. But this was actually with the Board of Supervisors working with the local tribal communities, the Tataviam, Tongva, and this is stuff that it's hurtful to read. It's sad. And it's easy to discount and say, oh, they're just being sensitive. It's like, no. And a lot of this is so this talks about what we can do and what is like ongoing, like the issues that, because we can think now, okay, well, it's a clean slate. They should just get over it. Okay, well, think about, and I always like equate it to this. So think about at Auschwitz, right? You have this concentration camp that decimated people's families, right? Okay, so you had the liberation of the camps and it closed. What do you do after that? There was no resources, there was no help, and that's exactly what happened after the closure of the missions. So this little report, it's a pretty easy read. It's not very long. It's got a lot of, if you look up the one online, the color pictures are magnificent. They're beautiful. But it's one of those things where, okay, all this damage was done, and within a generation or two, they completely lost their language. They couldn't even physically talk to their grandparents because they didn't speak the dialect anymore. So it was really, really devastating, and they couldn't go back. And same thing with, folks that came out of, German concentration camps. You have no land. You have no property. Like, you have the clothes on your back, and that is about it. So there's really important battles that occur to get land. And as we were talking about with the Tataviam Land Conservancy, it's still happening. It's like happening right now. We just now, like last month, got land back. Which is bonkers. It's 2024. I'm sorry. I duplicated slides. What am I doing? Oh, no, it's a different one anyways. But this just talks about how it was this big agricultural endeavor. There was a lot of cattle farming, things like that, things that were all brand new to, and Helen will talk a lot about subsistence and surviving off of, the native plants that were here. And if you guys read that Tending the Wild book, or I wish they would do an audiobook because it's a big book. Just all the processes of surviving off of the native plants and animals.
You were talking about the water. There's also a freshwater spring, but it's not right there. Have you been to it?
The mission? Not in a minute.
Not from the mission. If you were to go on Rinaldi and get not quite to Laurel Canyon, on the same side as the hospitals.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a little monument and a whole little area there. And that was where they got their water. There was a freshwater spring.
And it was probably amazing.
But look at how far away it was from the mission. I mean, they still had to.
And who do you think had to carry it?
Thank you.
And that's the thing, too. If you follow, like, the village of Vasquez Rocks, multiple creeks, but the main Agua Dulce stream and the Escondido stream were right there, Castaic. There was, Castaic's a man-made lake, but there was a village there that we buried underwater. Eric's going to take it all out. It's fine. So this is a couple images of the mission. So a lot of it's been restored, obviously. Like the cloisters and some of the areas are in much better shape, but it was really degrading after so long. It was, natural adobe, local adobe materials. Again, guess who had to build it? So by the early 1800s, we think by 1819, all of the Tataviam living at this big village of Vasquez Rocks had been taken to the mission. So it was quiet there, and probably, out here it was probably a similar time frame. You guys out here are a lot closer to where the mission was, so I think this was maybe a little bit earlier. But they were baptized, given Spanish names, Christian names. So a lot of the mission records and baptismal records, that's what's useful in figuring out what was this person's name when they were born? Who were their parents? And as time went on, there was intermarriage, there was intermarriage of different native people at the missions because they weren't all just Tataviam. You have a lot of Tongva descendants that went to the San Gabriel mission, which is where you get the name Gabrieleño, San Fernando Mission Fernandeño. So people from multiple tribal groups and lineages that mixed together, lost track of who their ancestors were, they kind of adopted the name Fernandeño, which they still use today. So it implies, and most of the, so there are no full-blooded Tataviam anymore. So most of our descendants have Mexican or Spanish ancestry, Chumash, Tongva ancestry, but it's really great to look at those that fought back to and that survived. So this was Rogerio Roca. So he was baptized at the mission. I don't know how old he was when he went in. I think we do know that, but I just don't know it off the top of my head. But he was a really big advocate after the missions were closed and secularized, as it came under Mexican rule. He fought really hard for the Fernandeños to have land. Like, hey, you guys literally just stole all of this land and you're not giving us anything back to survive. And they, would block the purchase of Tataviam and Fernandeño folks buying or acquiring land. It's, so I'll read this to you. So in an effort to regain their homelands, tribal captain Rogerio Roca, so he was the tribal president, the leader, and a group of Fernandeño ancestors occupied a tract of land that was owned by local land developer and ex-California Senator Charles McClay and George Porter. Roca was sued twice by McClay for illegally occupying his own homelands. The lawsuits resulted in the well-publicized eviction of the Fernandeño from San Fernando. Just to add a little insult to injury, So under the Mexican-ruled California in 1843, so this was after the missions were secularized, approximately 50 Fernandeño leaders that survived the mission system made it out alive and made it out with each other, negotiated for land amounting to over 18,000 acres of the San Fernando Valley for the collective benefit of the Fernandeños, which it didn't obviously work out. And McClay got his name on one of the main avenues in San Fernando, which we're trying to change. So this is Juan Jose Fustero and his family. So it's believed that, and he's all the way on your left, my right. It's believed that he may be the last or one of the last genetically full-blooded Tataviam ancestors. And he died in 1921. So it's a really neat family picture there. I love this picture. And I love it because you can tell who his daughters are because they look exactly like him. It's very cute. So there's Bowers Cave. So I'm going to kind of just, so we're doing good. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'll just run through and show you guys some pictures.
Can you go back to McClay?
Yeah.
2 slides back. I'll take a quick picture. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I have to find it because I was jumping around.
Right there. That's it.
And this is, so if you go to the Fernandeño Tataviam website, they have a really good interactive timeline you can click on too. And they have a ton of pictures. They've done an amazing job of keeping all of their records together. Yeah.
I was just at the Geontry Museum, and there's a fascinating exhibit. I can't think of the name right now, but it has to deal with the whole mission project through the eyes of the Native Americans.
Oh, yeah. And at the Natural History Museum, they have a really beautiful section, too, where you can see, like, Ted Garcia's soapstone carvings. And it's good because a lot of these institutions that were complacent in this stuff, in harboring artifacts and, limiting access and stuff, are doing a great job now of trying to, fix that or fix what they can of it, Yeah.
Like, I don't know if any of you've been to San Fernando Mission. I've lived in that area all my life, but it's really amazing to go in there. If any of you get a chance to go there, right now the picture that showed the mission, the way it looked and how it was all beat up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a road that goes through an alley right through in front of it now.
Yeah.
And across the street is a park that has a lot of where they used to grab water from and stuff like that.
It's a beautiful area too. Every time I go, especially because I'm close. I'm 20 miles away, I think as the crow flies, it's only like 16 miles from Vasquez Rocks. It's like and that's the thing too. I don't know if Helen talks about like microclimates and different plant communities and stuff, but it's amazing how different. But when I go to San Fernando, I'm like, it's so nice down here. And I'll picture all the native grasslands and coastal sage scrub and all these beautiful communities that have been largely decimated, with development or, non-native plants. But the San Fernando Valley must have just been
But you can
beautiful.
grow juniper.
Huh?
You can grow juniper.
I do. And it makes me sneeze.
And we
I
don't.
love it. That's okay. It's worth it. So these are some pictures from like the teens through the like 30s and 40s. So these are tribal family members. They're amazing. Like the tribe has a lot of these really beautiful photos, and we're working these into our interpretive science at Vasquez. So you have a lot of tribal family members that served in various wars, World War II, Vietnam, World War I. The girls served, you had nurses, you had auxiliary aides, and all kinds of, a lot of involvement and a lot of pride. A lot of the elders that I know served in the Vietnam, now they're elderly, but they served in the Vietnam War, and they're still proud of that. They're still fighting for what they see as their land and their families, and, so it's an interesting thing to be a Native person in today's world and in today's United States, because it's conflicting in a lot of ways, but that's why it's not one size fits all, and it's not good to generalize because everybody's had such a different experience. So these are just some pictures mostly from like the 1970s. So this is the San Fernando, I think, 4th of July parade. So the kids, they really ramped up under the leadership of Rudy Ortega Sr., who was the tribal captain for decades. He passed away, I think, in 2008, unexpectedly. He was in his early 80s, but we all thought he was going to be around forever. But again, his son Rudy has done a really amazing job of carrying the torch on. So he was really big in the American Indian movement, advocating for Native rights and organized tribal government. These are two of his kids. I think that's Danny and Lisa. So cute. She's around. She does like a lot of the treasury work for the tribe. We had one of the first Tatavian powwows in modern history at Vasquez Rocks quite a while ago. It was very dusty, but I was little. It was really fun. It was beautiful. So now it works out well at Hart Park because there's actually shade and grass, which is really nice. We're not opposed to having it again, but we all say, it's a little bit easier at Hart. I like making it, make you guys do the work for it. But it is, the tribe is really active. They're some of the greatest people I've ever worked with. And of course you have family conflicts and, my uncle's driving me nuts, and they'll work, and they hire family, they hire from the outside. So they have different people that work, for their nonprofits and their different chapters. They have a tribal senate, an executive branch. So it's a very well organized, and that was the video I was going to show you guys, talked a little bit about that. So you can, if you go to their website, you'll see it. This is the tribal seal. So there's your grizzly, not your black bear, your grizzly bear and your golden eagle. Here's some of this is an example of a family reunion. We're excited at the property, the newly acquired property. We'll be having the family reunion this year, which is really exciting. There's a large push for education, not just for Native children, but for everybody. So if you guys ever want to collaborate on programming, you know where to find them. They're just over the hill. And then Alan, who wrote those beautiful books, he traveled all the way to England and was the first time a Southern California or California Native person did a presentation in Bath in this area in England. So yeah, and he builds tomols, the canoes. They're building, I think, 2 new ones right now, which is great. We showed you guys this one, the Land Conservancy. So hopefully within the next couple years, we'll have even more acquisitions to help, continue all the good work. And it's been a long path, but I'm just really impressed by the resilience and the patience of the tribal members and the staff who aren't Native, who just really have helped push all of this forward. And, so I look forward to you guys, and I know this was a lot. And at some point too, if we ever want to do a supplementary thing, we can do, talk about some activities you want to do with kids or the public. But basically it's just if you take from today, don't be afraid to ask questions. Please do ask questions. Don't feel like you have to make something up to fill the space if you don't know, because there's a lot of things that we don't know. You have a lot of good resources. You have the tribe, you have me and Helen and a lot of your senior docents. but you guys you'll do really well. I believe in you. You have a lot of resources at your disposal. And I'll send to Ron a good list of links and things like that. I just didn't have time to put it together. But yeah, so we'll get you all set. And if you guys have any questions, we can take the last couple minutes and you can ask those. And otherwise, your bottoms are probably numb by now. Yeah.
I've always been a little bit confused as to how I refer to the Tatavians. Here I see they refer to themselves as Mission Indians.
Yes.
I was told we should refer to them as Native American. What is the respectful title?
That's a good, and I should have said that up front. I just, scatterbrain. So it depends is the answer. Some indigenous people, so I like to use the word indigenous or native, implying that they are from and of a place, right? I am not indigenous or native to here. Some people say, oh, I'm a California native, but technically, oh, I'm second generation Californian. And it's like, well, you're not actually a native. You're not a native Californian. So there's kind of some confusion in that area. Some native people, even LA County native groups, hate the word Indian. They do not want to be called Indian.
I was curious the other day, I was talking to some people.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to address them.
Yeah.
I wanted to find out what the tribe was.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to, I didn't want to say, what's your Indian tribe?
Yeah.
I didn't know how
and you can just politely ask. From my experience, if you come to it or come to a person with respect and patience and kindness and understanding that they don't owe you the information, because again, my friends that are native that do education and are a little more well known, they get bombarded with people demanding things of them all the time, But you can just politely say, hey, what would you like me to refer to you guys as? Do you prefer Indian? Do you prefer native? Is it something else? But typically I've noticed like indigenous or native is a term that a lot of groups are comfortable with, but it's very individualistic,
So for the general public, what should we refer to them?
So mostly, I say, you can say Tataviam Indians, that's what if a group calls themselves that, Band of Mission Indians, you can say Tataviam Indians, you can say Native Americans. American is not a Tataviam word, but overall the Tataviam are very open to to what you call, they're not gonna, and if there's a correction, they say, hey, do you mind saying it this way? But for the sake of you guys teaching here for the Tataviam at Placerita Canyon, any of them seem okay. Yeah. But Native peoples tends to be a pretty benign term. Yeah, and then I'll get you back there.
I like to use the OPs, the original people.
The original people, yeah. First peoples, yeah. Yeah.
That's acceptable, I found.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's very diverse. You remember that map with all the different tribal groups? It is very different. And you'll have two people in the same household that have different opinions too, but yeah. I know it's complicated. Yeah.
So in America, do we look at approximately 500 different chapters, tribes, villages? Do you know anything about that?
It's
vast.
That's a hard one because I don't know. It depends, and sometimes it depends what you're defining it as too. Because you've had families that out of the mission system would have split. You would have had one lineage that split, and over a couple hundred years, kind of formed different tribal groups. So it is in the hundreds, though. California alone is, 200 plus. So it's a lot. Yeah. And some are huge, some plains native groups are massive and have different, dialects and stuff within. So, yeah.
When at Vasquez Canyon, when you guys are telling the people stories there about that land there, do you guys tell them that they also filmed the Flintstones there?
Usually they ask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's all kinds of stuff. If you guys come in the next couple weeks, there's a big one filming there, so it's always something. Well, thank you guys. If you have any other questions, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yay.